environment. So lots of different types of fires are good for him. So. All right, it's now 5:30. I'm going to go ahead and kick off our pre-commission meeting. Just for my portion and report, just want to, obviously, I think most of us know that there could be a power outage tonight that affects us as well. So we don't anticipate that it will affect us, but if it does, we do have a plan in place. We will adjourn the meeting and reschedule it to next Wednesday, July 31st. It would be a PM meeting. And we would, depending on when, if or when the power goes out, we might need to have a motion and we would log that accordingly. Either we would keep the public hearing open or we would close it. So any decisions like that, we would obviously communicate that ahead of time and make that abundantly clear. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but we are prepared if it does. So with that, commissioners, any questions about today's agenda? All right.
Commissioner,
Justin.
President, I had one item on the agenda. We are requesting at the staff level that consent agenda item number 4 be remanded back to staff indefinitely. We have a little bit more work to do on that item. It's a procurement item and we want to, we had some late information come in that we want to make sure we take into account. So if you could go ahead and remand consent agenda item 4 back to staff, that would be appreciated.
Thanks, Justin. All right. Well, over to you.
Well, commissioners, thank you so much. First, I want to give you an update on the director. I've had a chance to speak with him multiple times today. He's doing well. He really wishes he could be here tonight with all the important agenda items that we have. But for him and his family, it was best that he stays home and continues to recover. So I'm glad to fill in tonight and do the best I can. Once again, he did ask me to prepare a brief director's report, and I'll go ahead and go through that now. Just jumping right in, last night, we had a really wonderful opportunity to meet with several of the neighborhood leaders and neighborhood groups that were able to come into ACHD. I actually took this picture. It's not the best picture. It was just me on my cell phone. But you can see we had probably 20 plus attendees at the meeting. Commissioner Goldthorpe was able to attend. 28, there you go. 28 members of the public had some really good discussions about our budget, the integrated 5-year work plan process, our project process, both capital projects and kind of safety engineering projects. I think staff did a really good job explaining what we're up to. And we had some really good questions from the public and had a chance to interact on various different topics. And so I wanted to highlight that really successful event. And I think this idea of combining our budget and integrated 5-year work plan workshop with the neighborhood and the know really is a good idea. And I think that would be our hope because that has some good publicity behind it. And I think the results speak for themselves. So our plan would be to do that again next year. So just jumping into the director's initiatives and categories, build together, build safe, and build more. I wanted to highlight a few things. We did wanted to report back on an important event that occurred last Saturday, I believe. We had a bike ride out in the bench area. Looks like the ride started at 9 a.m. We had 3 commissioners there. Those of you that were able to attend, thank you for doing that. Looks like the group rode Alpine, Shoshone, Kootenai, Philippi, Irving, Roosevelt, Cassia, Latah, and even a coffee break afterwards. So that's wonderful to hear. Overall, really good success. And I think there was a lot of good feedback related to our bicycle facilities and things in this area. So thank you to all for participating. And I think this is a great representation of the build together mentality that we're trying to achieve here at the Highway District. Also, I wanted to highlight under the build safe category, this is a extremely delicate project that we're working on in downtown Eagle. This is a drone view of the Eagle and Plaza intersection, and you can see that it is paved. and the lights are functioning. We turned on the signal on July 18th. And trust me, did we get a lot of great feedback when we turned on that signal. This has been a very unique project. It's not shown here on the screen, but we're, less than 1/8 of a mile from a major state highway and the intersection essentially of two state highways at 55 and 44. The traffic control and the plan through this area has been very delicate, very intentional. And I think it's a great example of building safe for a construction project. We've had our challenges here, but overall, I think the feedback from the community with the outreach we've been doing, the weekly emails, the regular on-site meetings that we've held with the businesses and the contracting community and citizens, including the city of Eagle and the maximum outreach we've done has really paid a lot of dividends here. And I think you see that. I threw up some of the comments we received on social media when we got it open, and just such a positive feedback that we received there. So project is ongoing, and there's still more now going to be work on Plaza. There's going to be more work at Second Street and State Street in Eagle. So we're getting through it, but this was a huge milestone, getting the signal operational at Eagle and Plaza. As you know, this intersection receives a lot of congestion and traffic. The last quick update I wanted to provide from a Build More category. This isn't an ACHD project, but those of you who've had a chance to travel down the freeway towards Nampa have seen the incredible progress that ITD is making on the Highway 16 corridor. This graphic I have up is this phase 1 interchange concept that they're working on. There'll be the ability to get on and off the freeway at the new Highway 16 interchange with I-84. The implications of this from a transportation and land use perspective are massive. This is just the phase 1. In phase 2, you're going to have flyovers and uninterrupted connections between 84 and 16. And when this all gets completed, it will continue to have a major impact on kind of the central Treasure Valley area. I wanted to take this opportunity also to highlight the projects that we are doing with supportive funding from the state along the USTIC and the Franklin corridors. We're actively in right-of-way acquisition along USTIC. We have designs complete, basically all the way out to the county line, working with our partners. Lots going on there. We're also carefully monitoring the opening of Owyhee High School this year with active construction at USTIC and Highway 16. McDermott has been realigned, and so there's now a new McDermott connection with USTIC. And so there's a lot going on out there, and we're going to be having a meeting with the school district coming up here in the next few weeks to talk about all this with ITD in the room so everyone's on the same page related to the traffic pattern in this area. Right now, McMillan is closed. ITD is assuring us that it will be open before school starts, but there's very few access routes to Owyhee High School. It's uniquely located out in a primarily undeveloped area. So McMillan and USTIC and Highway 16, essentially what they're building now, those are going to be the primary access points to that high school. So we're watching that one very closely. With that said, a few items coming up. End of July, we have our all staff at Meeker. This is just next week. We're going to have the whole team out there to be able to walk through, take a tour. We're going to have key staff at different locations describing the building and taking questions. We're really excited about this opportunity, along with quarterly awards. Several advisory committee meetings happening in August, commercial developers advisory, bike advisory, and pedestrian advisory group are meeting this month. I did want to highlight integrated 5-year work plan public comments close on August 14th. So once that public comment period closes, we gather it all together. We're going to bring it back to you for further discussion. And our budget adoption on August 28th, which is a key milestone every year for the Highway District. With that, I think I covered everything that I had, and I'm glad to stand for any questions you might have.
Great job, Justin. Commissioners, any questions?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
Justin, what's on the Highway 16 interchange? What's the timeline, or did I miss that?
Well, you didn't miss it,
Okay.
Commissioner President, Commissioner McKinney. They haven't provided an opening date. I can give you what I hear from staff, which is they believe that the connection to Franklin will actually open up before the rest of the highway. So you'll have an active interchange and access to Franklin Road while they're still doing work, essentially north of Franklin.
So the I-84 to Franklin Road section will be ready before the rest.
That is our understanding. I think that is their current plan. If you drive out there, you can see a lot of concrete has been poured in and around the Franklin area. The work at Ustick is less so. So that's going to be, they're kind of working from both sides to the middle. There's a lot of work going on at the freeway. There's a lot of work going on up at the interchange that they're developing at Chinden, at Highway 2026. So there's a lot going on there. To be honest, if they can get that connection open at Franklin, it'll have a huge benefit for the Amazon facility that is in Nampa near the Walmart, which is right on that corridor. And then it'll also help us at our 10-mile interchange, and access on 10 Mile will be improved, we believe, once they get that area open.
Mr. Goldthorpe?
And then correct me if my understanding isn't correct. But due to funding constraints from the state, we're not working on our side of Franklin yet, correct?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, yes. The only thing we've started on our side of Franklin is the design. The right-of-way and construction funding remains to be determined. Based on current estimates, as you know, the 36 million is not likely to take us to Franklin Road. It will most likely be consumed with our work on Ustick Road. So that's kind of where we're at on those projects. And there's further conversations to be had with the commission about how to approach that issue.
Oh, I think there'll be short conversations. Thank you.
Well, there's no other questions, comments. Thanks, Justin. We'll be at ease until 6. All right, it's now 6 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone that's here and online. Please join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I mentioned this at our pre-commission agenda, but I'll just mention it again before we adopt the agenda. Obviously, we're aware of the potential storm and outages. If the power does go out, we'll reconvene likely next week on the 31st. But obviously depends on where we fall in the meeting. So we have a plan in place if that happens. So with that, commissioners, the first order of business is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed and placed on the regular agenda. We do not have any of those requests. However, we do have a request to remand item number 4 back to staff. So is there a motion?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
I move that we approve consent agenda items 1 through 3 and remand consent agenda item number 4 back to staff.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, so moving on to our singular item on our regular agenda. It's the State Street Project, 14th to 8th Street Concept Study Adoption Hearing. This is a public hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and open that public hearing and turn it over to staff for their presentation. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Tom Laws. I'm the planning manager with the Ada County Highway District, and I'm also the project manager of the State Street 8th to 14th Street Concept Study Design. Tonight's hearing is an action item, and staff is before you today to look for a commission decision and concept adoption of the effort. In this presentation, I intend to provide a quick overview of the project, a recap of the public feedback and findings to date, and then I'll turn it over to the commission for formal public hearing and commission direction. As a reminder, this project is located in downtown Boise, and the project limits are just west of 8th Street, moving west all the way to the intersection of 14th Street. And it includes the existing and future YMCA really at its core. In addition to myself, from the start of this effort, an interagency team was formed and met regularly throughout the process to review findings and confirm direction. This team was made up of myself and Cody Hellman from ACHD, Stephen Hunt with Valley Regional Transit, Bree Brush and Tessa Grieger from the City of Boise, and Zach Pietmeyer from Capital City Development Corporation. Following commission direction at the March 1st, 2023 commission hearing, the concept design kicked off last summer and over the last year has focused on existing conditions analysis, concept creation and evaluation, and public and stakeholder outreach. Most recently, staff presented the findings during the June 26th Commission pre-adoption work session and launched an additional 2-week public comment period leading up to the Commission adoption hearing this evening. For project objectives, the State Street 8th to 14th project began as a pavement maintenance effort. As highlighted on the images to the left, State Street corridor experiences significant pavement, drainage, and ADA accessibility issues. Over the past year, ACHD has completed projects from 2nd to 4th, is currently reconstructing 4th to 8th, and the 8th to 14th concept study before you today is the next step west in this effort. Other project objectives include improving safety for all users, ensuring the creation of a design that complements not only existing land uses, but also looks to the future with recent Boise zoning code update and the YMCA Block 6869 redevelopment project. It remains within the existing 80-foot right-of-way, thoroughly engages stakeholders and the public, incorporating that input back into the design, and completion of a project that seamlessly follows the adjacent State Street improvements. One additional project objective included the examination of adjacent corridors to better understand potential impacts of the system as a whole. For bike routes, Franklin and Bannock are both designated low-stress bikeways with adopted concepts in October and November of last year. With both of these, improvements are largely focused on the intersections and include full traffic signals, RFBs, raised intersections, and bulb outs at key locations throughout the corridors. For the motoring public, a detailed modeling was conducted and looked at a 2043 overall network as far out as Whitewater Park to the west. The results found that on nearly every single alternative route, significant vehicular capacity exists today, and those routes will remain under capacity in the future. One additional item I wanted to highlight here, and it'll be in ACHD first. With this effort, Planning and Projects intends to work closely with Commuter Ride on a targeted advertising and incentive campaign focused on that 2026 construction timeline. The goal of this effort is to further help highlight these alternative corridors and alleviate construction impacts on commuters and the surrounding downtown employers. Throughout this work, ACHD staff, the consultant Kittleson and Associates, and the interagency team developed the following 3 concepts for consideration. Concept A, 5 to 4 lanes with sidewalks and a cross-section that's largely similar to what is there today. Concept B1, which is 3 lanes and shared use paths on both sides. And concept B2, 3 lanes with protected bike lanes. Over the course of the year, 2 key public feedback opportunities occurred. The first, taking place last winter, looked at the main strengths and opportunities all along the corridor. Overwhelmingly, the feedback received highlighted the need for safer crossings on the corridor, providing bike lanes, improving existing sidewalks, maintaining or improving existing traffic congestion, and providing center left turn lanes all tied for second. For the second public outreach, the 3 concept alternatives were presented, as well as some of the distinct trade-offs between each. The outreach strategy was one of the most comprehensive by ACHD to date and included door-to-door outreach, in-person tabling, stakeholder meetings, an all-advisory committee open house, as well as the traditional mailers, press releases, and social media outreach. During the 2-week public comment period, the official project website saw over 3,600 page visits and 1,154 individual survey responses. Both records of outreach since we've started using the Engage platform. From the survey response, 36% of respondents supported concept A, 22% concept B1, 40% concept B2, and 2% none of these concepts. I also wanted to follow up at this time to a question raised during the June work session. One thing we did over the last month was revisit the survey responses and compare those to origin and destination data for this stretch of State Street. What we largely found is the survey distribution by area codes largely align with the trip characteristics of users from this 8th to 14th stretch, which really provided further confidence from the team that the outreach completed. To further summarize what we heard from key stakeholders, the City of Boise, YMCA Block 6869 Development, 8th and State Development, and the North End Neighborhood Association all voiced support for concept B1. Valley Regional Transit supported a combination of A and B1 to preserve 2 travel lanes in both directions at their 11th and State Street stops. The Boise VA supported concept A. Boise School District supported concept A with concept B2 as their second preference. And from conversations with other stakeholders and property owners along the corridor, the preference was really mixed between A, B1, and B2. As presented during the June 26th pre-adoption hearing, there are many different considerations for you to take into account with trade-offs of each alternative. While staff believe that any of the options are viable, we are aware that there are distinct policy considerations that you all must take into account. For next steps, as highlighted as part of the project objectives, one of the main goals of the concept study is the development and completion of a project that seamlessly follows adjacent State Street improvements. With this, following the commission decision tonight, ACHD staff intends to finalize a design contract and bring that back to you for approval in August. With the design estimated to take roughly 18 months, this will roll directly into a construction season of 2026. Commission, thank you for your support and direction during this concept study process. State Street 8th to 14th is really a unique corridor and one of the main entries into downtown Boise in the state capital. Due to the right-of-way constraints, there are distinct trade-offs between these concepts presented. At this time, we'll look to you for commission decision and preferred alternative. And this concludes my presentation. I'll pull up again the concepts under consideration, and as a regular agenda item, this is a public hearing and we have several members of the public and the interagency team here that wish to testify. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Madam I'd like President? to.
Commissioner,
Sorry, go ahead.
Commissioner McKinney?
Yes, thank you. Tom, just a quick question on the public outreach and public input results and on all those efforts. Did any of those involve a random sample of people as opposed to what is more like a self-selected sample? For example, if you have a public meeting and you invite people to come and you sample the people who are there, that's more of a self-selected sample because it's only the ones who decide to come to give their input. On the other hand, a random sample where you simply take a random survey of people that live in a particular geographic area, you're more likely to get a better picture. Was any of our outreach random sample? That's question one. And question two, did we get any input from people who are commuters into downtown via State Street that don't live in Boise?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I think in the traditional sense of a random sample, all of the survey responses received would be that self-selected category. We tried our best to have that be as broad reach as possible, including those press releases and interviews with the media, the postcards distributed, but at the end of the day, it was really those who chose to respond that did. In terms of outreach, we did look at all of the area codes within ACHD in the county, and we did have several percentages from those outside area codes from the downtown core. And when we compared those with some of those origin and destination data, what we found was the percentages largely aligned with the response rates from those outside area codes to the typical users that you would see in that section of State Street.
So what you're, I see. So what you're saying is that those from outside Boise areas who did respond, their preferences appeared to be consistent with the preferences of those that were in the Boise area that did respond. Is that what you're saying?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, not exactly. I don't know if I have that information off the top of my head. What I am saying is the number of responses that we received from those area codes outside of Boise largely aligned with the percentage makeup of the users of the corridor.
I'm still not quite sure I understand what the percentage of users of the corridor. Explain to me how that, I mean, I'm not quite sure I'm following what you mean by that.
Yeah, I might actually at this time pull up Sonia Delighten, who can speak a little bit about the Excopia data
Okay,
that we use to determine this metric.
that'd be great.
So-
Thank you.
Good evening, President Pickering, Commissioners. Thank you for the question. For the record, Sonia Delighten with Kittleson and Associates. Commissioner McKinney, what we did was look at who uses State Street and who uses State Street when you get further to the west, in more central Ada County, and then in this section of State Street in particular between 14th and 8th Street. And we, using travel characteristic data and the traffic counts on State Street itself, we evaluated for this corridor and the people using this corridor, the people driving on this corridor today, where are they coming from? Are they coming from the north end? Are they coming from Eagle, Star, Northwest Boise, the east end? And we calculated those percentages for the people driving on this section of State Street. Where are they coming from and going to? And so we looked at that cross-section out of the people using this section of State Street. Where are they coming from and where are they going to? And then we compared those percentages to the zip codes from the people who responded to the surveys. And I'll give you an example. For this particular section of State Street, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 5% of the people using this section of State Street come from areas like Eagle or Star. And when we looked at our survey responses, approximately 2 to 5% of our survey responses were also people who lived in Eagle or Star.
Okay.
Does that help answer your
Yeah,
question,
I
sir?
think I understand what you're saying. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Sonia. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, Sonia, don't run away yet. Data, was it GIS based or how?
President Pickering, Commissioner Goldthorpe. So to gather the data of who responded to the public involvement survey,
No, you made the comment, at least the way I understood it was, 2 to 5% of the people utilizing State Street at all come from Eagle or Star, those areas. How do we determine that?
right, Creston, President Pickering, Commissioner Goldthorpe. So I just wanted to highlight, we know who responded to the survey because they put their zip codes into the survey. To get the information about who's using State Street itself that we compared that information to, we got that using replica data. You might remember replica is also the travel pattern tool that we are using for the CIP project. And that tracks anybody using State Street in this area that has a GPS system or their cell phone turned on. And it summarizes where their origin and destinations for their trips have been. And so it's a big data source for all people using State Street. The data was from the fall of 2023.
Thanks. I actually have more confidence in GIS data than when we put cables across the road.
Any other questions for staff? All right, thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna switch gears to the public comment portion of the public hearing. We have Rachel on here, so she's gonna invite folks to come up to the mic. We're gonna hit some key partners first, and then we're gonna go to the overall list of folks that have signed up, so.
Yep. First, we have Stephen Hunt.
Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Good evening. Madam President, members of the commission, my name is Stephen Hunt, Chief Development Officer at Valley Regional Transit, and I'm here on behalf of Elaine Clegg, CEO of VRT. So Valley Regional Transit is uniquely interested in the design of State Street between 8th and 14th. Our goal is to connect more people to more places more often, all while using as little right-of-way as possible. Transit is a proven way to reduce transportation conflicts that come with growth in a way that is safer and more compatible with pedestrians and cyclists. Route 9, State Street, is the busiest route in the state and runs the full length of the study area. In fact, because more people are on the bus on this section of State Street than any other, slower travel times here result in a larger transit rider delay. As VRT's first premium corridor, State Street has the most frequent and extensive service of any in our system. And delays to the route will cost VRT and our funding partners more than delays in other parts of the network. Finally, the bus stop at State and 11th, the midpoint in the study area, is regularly one of the highest boarding and alighting stops for Route 9. For all these reasons, VRT has consistently voiced concerns about an either-or design approach that sets up a direct trade-off or conflict between vehicular capacity in Concept A and enhanced non-motorized amenities and placemaking represented in Concepts B1 and 2. The public outreach shows that while they want improved amenities, it's the highest ranked improvement in the survey, they also have serious concerns with reducing capacities, their third highest concern. VRT believes a hybrid approach of Concept B1 that includes elements of Concept A will better meet all the goals of the corridor. Further, we believe it's false to frame this project as a corridor narrowing project. State Street is 5 lanes west of 14th Street and 2 lanes east of 8th Street, and that's not going to change. Where and how the transition occurs is the only question. And there's no need that all 6 blocks within the project area have the same number of lanes, lane configuration, or non-motorized treatments. Tonight, we ask that the ACHD Commission only move forward with adopting Concept B1 if it includes considerations for travel modifications between 11th and 8th and incorporating elements of Concept A between 11th and 14th. As our comment letter on page 35 of your packet shows, a hybrid approach could result in a solution that addresses the public's interests of improved non-motorized amenities and maintained capacity. Specifically, a B1 hybrid could have a 3-lane cross-section and full multi-use path between 8th and 11th, where pedestrian and bicycle amenities and safety improvements are most pressing. 2 continuous eastbound travel lanes all the way to 9th Street, and 2 westbound travel lanes west of 11th Street, where vehicular capacity is most necessary. It could also include far side in-lane transit stops that maximize transit effectiveness and minimize transit passenger delays and conflicts with other travelers. Pedestrians and non-motorized safety improvements west of 11th could include signalized crossings as designed in Concept A, leading pedestrian intervals, and a continuous 7-foot minimum sidewalk. Also, the concept could include left turn pockets at 13th, where 41% of the intersection crashes along the corridor occur, and consideration for left turn restrictions during peak hours at intersections that may not have left turn pockets. This concept could result in shorter crossings, and we feel like it strikes a balance between the users of the corridor and the needs expressed by the public. So we thank you for the opportunity to talk tonight and weigh in on this important project to VRT. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
Stephen, can I ask a couple of quick questions?
Sure.
It sounds like you've got a variety of ideas of things that VRT would like to see in this project. All of them that you have mentioned, or at least the most significant ones affecting the transit operations, would all be incorporated in Concept A, would they not?
Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, or Commissioner McKinney, the only thing that would not be included would be the multi-use path and the shorter crossing between 11th and 8th.
Right, but that's not really a transit related thing, is it?
Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, VRT has an interest in pedestrian and bicycle connections to and from transit and how it connects with the development. And we are always supportive of things that are going to improve the bike and pedestrian network around transit. So yeah, it is of interest to see how well we can improve crossings, say at State Street along that section, and we would support a 3-lane cross section on that section for those reasons.
You mentioned that the State Street route is the busiest route in the VRT system. And I recall you were here a couple of years ago. We were talking about it as well. At that time, I asked, what's the average number of riders per bus during the peak time on that route? And at the time you told me, I seem to recall you said there were an average of 12 riders per bus during the peak hour. Is that still the case?
I should have come with that answer. I do not have an updated number for you on that.
Has ridership on VRT gone up or down in the last 2-3 years?
Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, McKinney, that has tended to go up over the last 2 years. Yes, it's seasonal, but it has gone up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, did you have a question, Commissioner Goldberg?
Not a question, but just a comment, and that is mostly for the rest of the audience tonight. For the last 10 years that I've been closely associated with all the concepts for State Street and all of the desires of transit, including the ridership and everything else. We decided for the last 10 years that we were going to concentrate on making the State Street corridor a success, or not have any reasons for no success for VRT. That it's pretty much, and this is my term that I've used consistently, a fish or cut bait project. meaning State Street has to work here or it isn't going to work. I mean, VRT has to be able to work here. It won't work anywhere else. And every one of our partners has thought that was a reasonable approach, especially for the makeup of the commission the last 10 years. We never had a conversation until just recently about restricting vehicular traffic. And so that's a concern of mine for this whole stretch. Thank you.
Stephen, could you mind sharing how many bus stops are in this stretch of road that are being considered for this concept?
Yeah, Madam President, the number of stops along this corridor are
Not the whole quarter, just this project.
correct. In this project area is 3, I believe. There's the 2 at State and 11th, and there's the 1 at State and 9th. And
There was just one.
well, it's a pair of stops at State and 11th.
Okay.
So 1 and 2. And then the stop at 9th, we have talked about, we would like to propose moving it around the corner. So it's
Right.
no longer on State Street, but would be on 9th. We've had those conversations with the design team and feel like there's a pathway forward there. So that's a number.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Next, we have David Duro.
Welcome, Dave.
President Pickering, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to be here and express my personal support and YMCA support for Concept B1. As you know, the Y location is on State Street between 10th and 11th. And if you haven't been there recently, it's a busy place. We have about 50,000 visits a month to that facility. People of all ages, abilities, shapes and sizes come to the Y. And as you know, in the recent history, we've had several pedestrians being struck crossing State Street, and in fact, one fatality of a dear friend and long-term member. And so as we look at the concepts that are presented and knowing that our traffic with the new Y is going to about double, moving from 50,000 visits to 100,000 visits a month, we realize it's going to be a very active area. And in our opinion and in our study, Concept B1 is going to provide the best and safest way to get people to the YMCA, regardless if we are on the north side of State Street or on the south side of State Street. So we strongly urge you to adopt Concept B1.
Thanks, Mr. Duro. Commissioner Hanson?
Thank you. Dave, I appreciate this. I know that the design has taken an enormous amount of effort to come up with this, with assumptions about certain traffic patterns, but that a lot of the facility for the Y is going to be also on the south side, which borders Jefferson. And a lot of our residents don't use Jefferson because they're just in the habit of using State Street. They come to the Y, go to the Y parking lot, even the Y parking lot on the south side, they use the State Street. So I haven't figured out that actually you can get there faster using Jefferson today, especially if you're doing it during that short peak period when people are wanting to come into town in the morning. Do you think that would change as the way the development, because your development goes down focused also on Jefferson, a massively underutilized corridor, if that would change as the Y uses get spread around, not just north of the State Street now, but also on that whole block to the south?
President Pickering and Commissioner Hanson, I think that's a great question. You know, as we contemplate that redevelopment of the Y on the Jefferson side, what will reside there is a childcare center and a parking garage, which main entry will be off of 10th Street. So I think that traffic going down State will still turn right or left onto 10th to access the garage. But you could certainly do that from Jefferson as well. I just don't have enough data to really comment how that might shift the use. I do know that one of our great partners is the Boise School District and Boise High, you know, and we gain so much by having a parking garage on the same block as the YMCA. You know, we're beside ourselves with excitement to have that because it will limit or reduce some of those people that are crossing State Street. On the other side of that coin is a whole bunch of students who come to the Y every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, that will now be crossing State Street at that very same intersection. So there's a little bit of trade-offs throughout the project. And I don't think we're really going to understand those traffic patterns till everything's built, but it will be a busy area.
Right. No, I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
think we discovered a lot when we did the modeling, or our consultant did the modeling, and showed that even if, you know, a third of the people use Jefferson or Bannock to get to their destination downtown, it'll still be underused.
Yeah.
Those streets will still be underused. So, yeah, thanks.
Hey, before I give up my time, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the commission and the staff and leadership of ACHD for helping us mitigate and make that intersection safer, and taking some steps that, you know, were extraordinary, I think, in timing and addressing that issue. It has improved. We still have near misses. We haven't had any accidents that I know of lately, but I just wanted to say thank you for taking action and addressing those needs.
Thank you. Next up, we have Bree Brush.
Good evening. Thank you. Madam President, Commissioners, on behalf of the City of Boise, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this project tonight. On June 19th, you received a letter from Mayor McLean and our City Council leadership on our preference for concept B1. I'll reiterate a few of the points in that letter today and share a couple more. This project must strike a challenging balance to accommodate multiple, sometimes competing goals. Best-in-class transit, a walkable urban downtown for residents and visitors, and a safe street whether you are in your car or on a bike. B1 rose to the top as the city's preferred option, primarily because it provides the greatest safety improvements for all corridor users by reducing crossing distances, providing dedicated left turn lanes, and a separated path for pedestrians and cyclists. In a downtown especially, space comes at a premium. We believe in this case, reallocating space from the travel lanes to the curb allows for activation that better aligns with the anticipated urban development on the corridor. With just the Block 68 and 69 development on this segment, we expect more than 600 units of housing, 26,000 square feet of healthcare and education space, and 18,000 square feet of retail. This is not including the YMCA facility itself, its childcare facility, or their parking garage. And we know VRT has some concerns about the lane transitions. I won't minimize those. We invest several $million a year in VRT, so their ability to operate efficiently is key to us. But we believe some of those elements that Stephen referenced in Concept A for transit can be incorporated into B1 to honor those investments while still providing space behind the curb to maximize safety and mobility for people walking and bicycling to destinations on this corridor. In closing, I want to thank ACHD staff and the consultant team for the incredible effort they put into this process. I've been on a lot of project teams over the last few years with ACHD, and I can tell this one really is the gold standard for outreach, constant communication, iteration of different designs. It's deeply appreciated by city staff and leadership.
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney?
So Bree, let me just be clear then. What you're saying is that the city of Boise is in favor of taking the vehicular capacity of State Street and cutting it in half. Is that what you're saying? You're in favor of more congestion?
President Picker and Commissioner McKinney, I wouldn't say it's cutting the capacity in half. It's distributing the capacity more efficiently to the rest of the system, which can absorb it.
If it has 2 lanes of traffic in each direction now, and under option B, it'll have 1 lane of traffic in each direction, that cuts its capacity in half, doesn't it?
Sure, and it'll be absorbed by the rest of the system,
And
is what it looks like.
And the consultants who analyzed this acknowledged that it would cause more congestion. It would increase delay for all users, all vehicular users of State Street in this area.
If people don't choose to, Madam President, take alternative routes, it would cause more congestion. But if they make different choices, as they do today, when it goes from 5 lanes to 2 lanes, suddenly they turn off, they use a different corridor, parallel corridor, it would see congestion. But the hope is that the excess capacity can be shifted to those corridors that have the capacity.
So you think it's appropriate for this commission to choose its policies for purposes of making people change their behavior? Is that what you're saying?
Madam President, people change their behaviors all the time based on roadway design, whether they can walk or bike if they feel safe, whether it's too congested and they want to take an alternative corridor because they think they can go faster. You are always creating situations where people have to make a choice of how they get to work, how they get to school.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson?
So, yeah, I appreciate this, Bree. I just wanted to sort of reemphasize, you made one point about Valley Regional Transit and that ACHD provides no operating funds for Valley Regional Transit. The lion's share of operating funds comes from the city of Boise's property taxes. And then that is matched by FTA money, Federal Transit Authority money. So there's a very close link between the two. And so you've confirmed in your testimony that any concerns VRT has about the way in which those bus stops are set up under option B1 can be accommodated within the cities, and that you work. I just want to confirm that that's the case, that if we go ahead with B1, the cities will work with the agency they largely fund to work out the solution.
Madam
the best
President,
solution.
Commissioner Hanson, I think one of the really challenging parts of this project is that we don't always have the most cutting edge transit treatments because transit is not widely pervasive in the Treasure Valley. We had a consulting team who had experts in this space walk through different treatments that could facilitate transit working on a corridor, even in the width in B1.
The other is I just want to make an observation that the investments in downtown that have been happening along in those areas where they've just been surface parking lots. My assumption is they have generated significantly more property taxes than when they were surface parking lots. Is that correct?
I would have to refer you to the county assessor
Yeah.
for that.
But yeah, you can pretty much guarantee that that's a major source of investment since we have to fund our services based on property taxes. You have to make that balance between the return. This agency, as you'll see from our budget, has a significant chunk that is dependent on property taxes. So how we invest long-term, how our partner agencies ensure investments long-term in that property makes a huge difference in whether we have the capacity to provide public services. So I just want to make that point. And of course, the other is that I've driven down State Street and I've noticed that over in the many, many years I've lived here, and as the character of 8th Street has changed and the data seems to prove that the afternoon peak doesn't seem to be as big of an issue because the northbound 8th Street no longer really serves as a couplet with 9th. That the real data shows that people are still in the habit of using State Street to get to 9th, turning and then going downtown. But once they're downtown and they're leaving in the afternoon, they actually do take another route to go west because 8th Street no longer functions in quite the same way as a couplet. And also if they're on the other side of the State House, that's a narrow street. We're not being asked, the public hasn't been asked, would you like this to be 4 or 5 lanes all the way through? The state has already insisted that that'll only be 2 lanes by the State House. So the dynamic of how people have changed their behavior has already taken place because of decisions that the state, the city, ACHD has made, CCDC has all made with regard to 8th Street and the streets around downtown. So I just want to point out people make choices in their own best interests all the time.
Sure. Maybe, Madam President, to the commissioner's earlier point, the return in property tax value or other value, people downtown don't spend money from their cars. They park in a garage and then they walk to the business they're patronizing. If you look at some of the recent investments in streetscape on 11th Street and Grove, you can see new restaurants, activations, people coming out with their patio. That's how we generate revenue downtown, when people stay and want to spend money there.
Oh, so you're also generating sales tax money, which goes to the state, right?
I'll let them make that assumption.
Maria, I just want to say thank you for your leadership on the team with Tom and our staff, and thank you for the praise. We're obviously really proud of them and this process as well, but it's great to hear it from you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Madam President, in terms of community partners and neighborhood representatives, that's who I see jumps immediately out as me recognizing. But if there is anyone who is a representative of a neighborhood association or HOA or one of our community partners, you are welcome to come on up.
Doesn't look like it, so.
Great. So I'll start going in order. Next up, we have Clancy Anderson.
Welcome, Clancy. Now that we're in the traditional public comment period, please state your name and address, and you've got 3 minutes. Thanks, Clancy.
Clancy Anderson, 4611 North Shirley Avenue, Boise, Idaho, 83703. President Pickering and Commissioners, I fully support the option that will improve the safety for people walking and biking on this stretch of State Street. A recent rash of pedestrian crashes, including a fatality, and future development in adjacent areas should be reason enough to show safety for these modes should be improved. But here are a couple more reasons why ACHD should not be constructing a wide car-centric State Street. Currently, many streets in the downtown core have lane reductions with little effect on traffic and congestion. In the past few months, State Street has been effectively reduced to 1 lane in each direction from 14th to 19th in a few different configurations. And for the past 2 weeks, Idaho's been reduced from 3 lanes down to 1 lane at 10th Street, in addition to the Union Block. I have been driving these streets daily from about 4:30 to 5 p.m. with little to no problem. This is likely due to having many options when traveling east to west in downtown Boise. Additionally, I sent a study to you this afternoon or earlier this morning that was just released showing there's no impact to emergency response rates after road diets of 4 down to 3 lanes. This study in Cedar Rapids, Iowa examined both EMS responders' perceptions along with quantifiable data to come to this conclusion. The most notable thing from the study was that the public does need evidence-based facts prior to implementation and education regarding proper yielding to EMS. Lastly, we need to make space for transit. Not everyone lives close enough to walk or bike to downtown or owns a car. And so we must provide that transit option. State Street provides a best-in-class route with departures making transit travel convenient, and this project should recognize that. And then I didn't have this in my original, but you know what? For the last 18 months, I've been somewhat handicapped. Today I'm walking. This is just a recent thing this week. But in that time, I've had a great experience in navigating our streets, more driving than I've done in 20 years, but also more walking and walking on crutches, walking with a slow pace, and shorter crossings will definitely help people that are handicapped, people that are older. And so I think that is very important that we do recognize that. So as always, both staff and the consultant have done a tremendous job in outreach, and that truly shows that people want options. Given all the above, I would recommend option B1, which will balance the need for safe and efficient travel options for all road users. Thank you.
Nancy.
Next up, we have Isabella Mares.
Welcome, Isabella. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Madam President and Commissioners. My name is Isabella Mers, and I live at 2292 West Kootenai Street. I grew up in Boise, and I'm a third-generation Boise High grad, but I moved away to St. Louis for about 10 years. I recently moved back because I missed the outdoor community lifestyle that living in Boise encourages. I am here to support Concept B1 for 3 traffic lanes with shared use paths for pedestrians and bicyclists, as well as a dedicated pull-out lane for buses. The main reasons why I support Concept B1 are safety and community related, and that it strikes a balance between the needs for both vehicular and non-vehicular infrastructure. The changes that we've seen in downtown over the past 20 years are significant. Growing up here, my view of downtown was somewhere that I could safely and easily bike to. I grew up on the bench, to visit one of the parks or to play in the river. Due to the sudden population increase our city has experienced, it has naturally become less accessible for everyone, especially for families with young children. I was lucky enough to feel confident riding downtown as a child, but as an adult with much more bike experience, I am more nervous to travel downtown, especially in certain high traffic areas that are naturally less friendly to bikes and to pedestrians. I know that the need for vehicular infrastructure is absolutely necessary, but I would also like to see the continued support of non-vehicular transportation. This maintains the outdoor-focused lifestyle that Boise has been to locals who grew up here, and that Boise promotes itself to be for non-locals seeking to live here. I also believe that structuring our city for bike, pedestrian, and bus transit is crucial for not only population growth and safety, but to strengthen our growing community. My parents, who have been here forever, frequently bike downtown to walk around, and they often run into people that they know or befriend people that they don't. This type of community is one of the things that makes Boise great, and it is my desire to help kids in Boise grow up with access to this community as well. By incorporating option B1, we are investing not only in the environmental health of the city, but the accessibility and community health as well. I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you all.
Up next, we have Judy Thorne, and then after Judy will be Ashley Bryant. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for your time, Commissioners. My name is Judy Thorne. I reside at 1603 North 19th Street, Boise, 83702. Thanks for this opportunity to share my thoughts as a bike user and a former commissioner myself. I'm here to show support for options B1 and B2. I've been a homeowner in Boise for close to 40 years. The first hat I'm wearing in providing testimony tonight is as a parent. Over the years, my house in the North End was the meeting place for many of the neighborhood kids in the mornings before school. They'd gather on their bikes, and after much safety training, they'd ride their bikes to school together from Washington Elementary to North to Boise High. Not a morning went by that I didn't hope for their safety, that cars would see them, that they'd pay attention and not stray too far into traffic. Those kiddos are now in their late 20s, and I've watched Boise become a more bike-conscious and safe place for all of us to ride, but we still have work to do. The corridor in question at this meeting, connecting very busy intersections with State Street, is a significant opportunity for all of you to do the right thing and consider both options B1 and 2 for bicycle accommodation, access, safety, and shared use paths. As a recent retiree myself, I ride my bike everywhere, try to, intend to ride even more, so long as my health permits. We should all be striving to make Boise the safest place to do this. The other hat from which I speak tonight is having been a Boise Public Works Commissioner for 5 years, 2017 to 21-ish. As you probably know, much of our work revolved around budgets, asking difficult questions that needed to be answered, and trying to understand the infrastructure of this great city. From my time on the commission, I do know that Boise is a very safety conscious and does try to do the right thing to protect its citizens. Whether it be through clean drinking water or by updating sewage lines, we simply do the right thing. So I implore you to do the right thing, keep making safe bike lanes for people in our great city, and thank you very much for your time related to this topic.
Thanks, Judy.
Thanks.
And next up, we have Ashley Bryant, who will be followed by Benjamin Piper.
Good evening, Madam President and Commissioners. My name's Ashley Bryant, and I reside at 2292 Kootenai Street. I'm a Boise High alumni. I am an employee at St. Luke's. I'm a student of public health at Boise State, and I'm a daily bike commuter. And I used to be an EMT. I list all these things off because part of my job right now at St. Luke's, I work in patient safety and quality, and one of our big principles is that the right thing to do needs to be the easy thing to do, or it's not going to happen. I've learned this a lot from my job, and I know we can do better for our kids and students. I think that safety is the first and foremost thing that we need to do as a city, especially as the Y expands, as Boise High continues to be a thriving school for students. A couple years ago, I was crossing a street in West Boise. So not in downtown, but it was a 7-lane street, and I saw a kid get hit by a car. I had to use my EMT training for that. And I know that reducing that crossing distance makes it safer. It makes it easier for cars to see pedestrians and cyclists as we use this shared space. And I don't really want to have to use my EMS training. So I propose my support for B1. I think it reduces the crossing distances the most. It makes it the safest for shared spaces. I think it will increase our, multimodal transit for bikes, pedestrians, bus users, cars, since there are so many alternate vehicular routes that I think we'll be able to use. And this also increases active transit for people when we make non-vehicular options safe and easy. It just increases the health of our community that we all love so much. And I would also ask just to consider greenscapes, because I think they're beautiful. They're shade that help, cool things down to make that active transit safer for people. So thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Ashley. Next, we have Benjamin Piper, and then it will be Becky Walker.
Good evening. My name is Benjamin Pieper. I'm a resident of Boise living at 2292 West Kootenai Street, 83705 in the Depot Bench neighborhood. I'm an avid cycle commuter. That's the primary reason I'm coming here tonight to talk about why I believe that option B1 is the best option for our community. I ride my bike to Micron Technology where I work pretty much every day or most days that I go into work. And I used to live near the corridor in the Veterans Park neighborhood. And so my primary way to get downtown on a bicycle was riding, actually not on State Street, but some of the parallel passages. Bannock Street was the one I primarily used. I feel that option B1 has two big advantages to it. One thing is it complements the infrastructure that's planned with the Bannock and other parallel corridors well. I don't think cyclists will use State Street as their throughway. And so a big shared path there is a nice way to get to your final destination without having to do any dangerous maneuvers crossing the street. And so that kind of leads me into my other primary reason for supporting option B1, and that is the safety reasons. Several people have already mentioned it, but just narrowing that cross section of the street just helps with cars being able to see pedestrians, shorter crossings, less risks of bikes and people crossing the road getting hit. That's what I have to say tonight about my support for option B1. Thank you for your time, President Pickering and commissioners.
Thanks, Benjamin. Becky, welcome. Next up, Becky Walker.
Good evening, Madam President and Commissioners. My name is Becky Walker. I live at 10827 West U Stick Road, Boise, Idaho 83713. And many people are going to be making the same point. So I just wanted to hit a little differently tonight. I typed out my statement like 5 times while I was at work, and now it's just sitting there. I am in support of B1 because I believe that it will serve our community the best. I am a career nanny. One of my biggest joys is teaching my kids how to use alternative transportation. We take the bus, we ride around town. And for 8 years, I had the pleasure of having 4 kids that I biked everywhere. My commute took me from West Boise into the East End. And then we had another family. So we would bike from the East End to the North End, all around town. And let me tell you, biking with 4 kids can be very tricky. Some of them felt safe some places, some of them didn't feel safe other places. But I can tell you the place that everyone feels safe is the multi-use pathway. Hands down, my kids at 3, 5, even now at 10, they're not my kids anymore, but we still get together and bike ride. They still feel the most comfortable on a multi-use pathway. We would use Jefferson to bike from Roosevelt all the way to Hill Road. That bike lane ends and the kids would get scared and want to jump on the sidewalk. No matter how many times I told them that is scarier than just biking next to me. Franklin, that narrow road can just be very scary for people who are not avid cyclists. And I use all modes of transportation. This is coming from someone who bikes, walks, takes the bus, and I have a vehicle. And I even have a little scooter. It's a 149cc. So I utilize all of it. I even have 2 e-bikes. I utilize all parts of these streets that we can. And the best one for all of us is B1 because it encompasses everybody's needs. When people feel safe, they will use it. And the way that downtown is growing, we need to promote mass transit. We need to promote other means of transportation. The newer generations, they're not driving like I did. They're using mass transit. They're biking, they're walking, they're living close to where they want to be working and going out to dinner. So I urge you to do B1, give everyone a safe way. Those other alternatives are great for many different people who drive and bike, but we also need something that's going to make the masses feel comfortable. And I believe that's the multi-pathway. Thank you.
Next up, we have Carlos Vidalis, who will be followed by Carol Vidalis. Welcome, Carlos.
Good morning, President Pickering, Commissioners. My name is Carlos Vidalis. I live at 10963 West Oleana Drive. I am outside the city limits, and I'm an occasional user of the city streets in Boise. I happen to drive on State Street every once in a while, and I can see what the situation is. This project got my attention because, frankly, I'm appalled that you will even be considering reducing the number of lanes on State Street. I am aware of the safety concerns. I'm aware of people wanting to bike and all that, but I think that the job of ACHD should be making sure that people can get in and out of the city and everywhere as quickly and as safely as possible. And I do not think that necessarily reducing the number of lanes on the street, it is going to be beneficial overall. As the last time I checked, the city of Boise and the county is growing. We're going to be getting more traffic. And most people are going to be riding vehicles, particularly if they going to be coming downtown. So if you're going to be doing something, I would say do plan A, as many lanes as possible, because that's what the city really needs. And that's what the whole county really needs, more space for vehicles to travel. And if you really are concerned about bicycles, I would suggest something different. Close all the bike lanes and take a street like Bannock and make it bicycles only. That will provide a corridor for bicycles where everybody will be safe, for example, and there will not have to be a problem with that. We're going to be run by cars or anything like that. So that's my humble opinion. As I said, I am not a city user all the time. I'm an occasional user, but I see that the congestion that's going to be caused by reducing the number of lanes in this area is going to ripple through to the entire county eventually, little by little. So I encourage you to give as much space as possible for vehicles to go through, because for the time being, for the generation, for my lifetime, most people are going to be driving vehicles. Thank you. Any questions? I'm available.
And next up. Okay, thanks, Carol. Thank you. Next up, we have Mike DiVittorio, and then it will be Jolene Evans.
Good evening, Mike DiVittorio, 925 Park Hill Court, Boise, 83702. I come here as a high school mountain bike coach with Boise High. More than 160 kids on that team, also a parent of a Boise High grad. I come here as a developer and a member of Urban Land Institute. I've been a member of the Y for 20 plus years, and I drive and bike this stretch daily. So I use multiple modes: walk, bike, and car. I urge you to first and foremost choose one of the 3-lane options for 2 reasons. Well, it's really one reason. It's all about safety. We want to slow down cars here to make it safer for people crossing, and we want to reduce the crossing distance for pedestrians. But we also want to make it safer for cars turning left and right on that particular stretch of road. To the prior gentleman's comment about needing to increase lanes or leave the same number of lanes here, got to breathe here. What I will say is that we are automatically reduced to 2 lanes at the state capitol. So we're talking about a stretch of 6 blocks where we go from 5 lanes, and in my opinion, should go to 3 lanes, down to 2 lanes. So we're not really affecting or restricting, to your earlier point, traffic. We're not reducing traffic flow by 50% by choosing in the non-5 lane option. What we're really doing is just tapering, and it's a sensible taper. So I am advocating for the 3 lane option, but I would also advocate for B1. First and foremost, because bicycle transit people are probably going to try to go on the lower impact, safer paths on Bannock, with it is planned, and Franklin. So while it seems nice to have a dedicated bike path, as a biker, I don't use the path over by St. Luke's. I use the road. And if I'm riding with my kids, I would probably use a multi-use bike path if I don't use one of those low impact lanes that is planned. So the other advantage to the B1 option is it accommodates the transit buses, and it provides a platform for future transit. We're going to have several hundred more units right here being built via the YMCA block project. And then we're going to have a lot of kids crossing the street to go from Boise High to the YMCA. So safety, again, is a primary concern, slowing traffic down and reducing that crossing distance. And it's not going to change the commute time of someone coming from Star or Eagle. They're going to use other routes. They're there today. There's plenty of capacity. And while it will cost more money for this B1 option, I would recommend you do that anyway. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Next, we have Jolene Evans, followed by Ethan Hobson.
Cool. Hello, President Pickering and Commissioners. My name is Jolene Evans. I live at 122 West Colby Lane in Boise, Idaho. I am testifying today in support of State Street Concept B1. I support Concept B1 because it will help to create the sustainable future Boise is aiming to achieve. Concept B1 would allow people to safely travel along State Street using all modes of transportation. I like that the multi-use path is so wide, about 4 feet wider than the greenbelt, and that would give walkers and bikers and all users enough space to share and safely pass one another. Concept B1 is also the only concept that has a turnout lane for the bus, allowing cars to pass while they are stopped. This concept would connect into other developments in downtown, like the 11th Street Bikeway and the bike lanes that will be built on 8th Street in the north end. Creating these connections will allow safe travel for mountain bikers, accessing the foothills, commuters traveling to work, and kids on their way to school or after-school activities. People are using State Street via other transportation and not just by car. And we've already seen the damages that occur when non-car users travel on roads not designed with their safety in mind. Boise had a record number of pedestrian injuries and deaths in 2023. This redesign allows us to dream of what we want to see from Boise in the future. And I dream of seeing people living in a connected town, able to use all modes of transportation and always reaching their destination safely. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'll stand for any questions.
Jolene. Next up, we have Ethan Hobson, and then it will be Nina Pinar. Welcome, Ethan.
Good evening, President Pickering, Councilman. My name is Ethan Hobson. I live at 105 Rogers Street up on the depot bench, and I'm here to testify on behalf of option B1. My whole life, I've lived and cycled in Boise, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I've cycled with Christian Armstrong in the Twilight Criterium when I was young. I rode a long-tail cargo bike to Jefferson Elementary when I attended there. And I'm currently a proud bike mechanic and a prouder bike commuter. My first job was on the pool deck at the downtown YMCA. I worked there through my freshman, sophomore, and junior years of high school. And during that time, I didn't have a license. So my only option was to ride my fixed gear Univega to and from that job at least 3 times a week for about 3 years. I would come down 16th from the bench where I lived, get on State Street, and I never would feel safe when I turned onto State. I would either ride on a non-existent shoulder and risk the cars that were there, or I would ride on the choppy, inconsistent sidewalk and risk slow, distracted pedestrians. For years, I made this decision over and over, and I always kind of wished that there would be a better option. So when I had the opportunity to come today and testify for a better option, I wanted to take it. Option B1, a 3-lane State Street with multi-use sidewalks, will provide a safe, comfortable environment for commuters like myself, and also for the casual rider making their way through downtown. I'd like to thank you for your time today and Rest my case for B1. Questions?
No, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
You said when you were young. I'm
Younger,
sorry,
thank
but
you.
everybody here looks young to me, well, except Carlos. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next
Nina?
up is Nina Pinar, who will be followed by David Guado.
Good evening, Madam President and Commissioners. My name is Nina Pinar and I live at 3100 West Gray Street. I'm testifying today as the Advocacy Director of the Boise Bicycle Project and to express my strong support for Concept B1. Every day, I bike across State Street and I witness the hesitation of bicyclists and pedestrians as they wait for traffic to slow and yield. State Street is an essential corridor that connects neighborhoods to workplaces, grocery stores, and entertainment venues.
Review that quote and then get back to the rest of the board about.
Thank you.
It has the potential to be a people-friendly street rather than a barrier between these places. At the Boise Bicycle Project, we see families come through our doors daily, families in need of accessible and affordable transportation, often because they had to sell their car to pay rent. These families deserve safe places to walk and bike. We've put over 13,000 kids on bicycles, and a project like Concept B1 would provide these families with the security of having safe places to ride. Concept B1 also addresses the anticipated future growth along State Street. The expansion of the Y is already underway, which will significantly increase foot traffic along the corridor. Boise High students need a safe way to cross the street to the new Y or to go to downtown after school. According to the crash data, the 11th and State Street intersection has already seen a fatal crash. And Concept B1 will significantly improve crossing safety with only 36 feet to cross as opposed to Concept A with 58 feet. State Street has also been identified as a key transit and mixed-use corridor under the new zoning code. So we can expect to see more apartment blocks and more foot traffic along this section in the future. Concept B1 will ensure that the current and future residents have access to transit stops and safe, active transportation options right outside their doorsteps. It is also my understanding that this project will be built in concrete, which lasts more than 50 years. So it's important that we anticipate future growth, which I believe Concept B1 does. And lastly, at the Boise Bicycle Project, we believe that Boise can be the bicycle capital of America. Projects like this make that a reality. State Street is a prime example of transforming a car-centric road into a people-friendly street without significantly impacting car traffic. In a recent staff presentation, there was only a 2-minute difference in traffic flow between Concept A and Concept B1. Additionally, Concept B1 includes a dedicated bus turnout lane, which will aid in traffic flow and encourage residents to use alternative transport modes. So I urge you to please consider adopting Concept B1, and I'd like to thank the commissioners and staff for allowing us the opportunity to be part of this public process and for presenting us with 2 fantastic projects. Thank you so much. I also have any questions.
Next up is David Guado, I believe, and then it will be Cynthia Gibson.
Good evening, President Pickering and Commissioners. My name is David Guyotto. I live at 2822 Tartan Place, Boise 83702. I'm the pedestrian and bicycle safety advisor for Tree Fort Music Fest, and I commute by bicycle daily throughout Boise and especially downtown. We at Tree Fort Music Fest enthusiastically endorse both Plans B for the State Street redesign, which are in harmony with the Tree Fort's desire for a downtown Boise that's safe, vibrant, walkable, and rideable for all Boiseans and visitors to our fair city. As Boise grows and as residential density increases along the State Street corridor, infrastructure that protects and encourages active transportation must be central to urban design, both for the health of its residents and the vitality of local businesses. While often in ACHD's past, street reconstructions have been overbuilt to accommodate maximum motor vehicle capacity, in this case, We at Tree Fort give a standing ovation to the complete streets and livable city design elements of Concepts B. We note that Concept B1 has the advantage over B2 of bus pullouts, which allow passage of cars while buses are stopped. Additionally, we support the maintenance and improvement of existing trees and landscaping along State Street, which benefits both neighborhood and global environments and contributes to the urban canopy of our beloved city of trees. We suggest that future design refinements to Concept B1 consider treatments to reduce bicycle pedestrian conflicts on the multi-use pathway and the application of shared lane markings or bicycle sharrows to the motor lanes for those confident cyclists commuting through the area. A concern brought up by Valley Regional Transit that I would like to address, the suggestion of a hybrid between Concept A and B1 has the potential, as I understand it, of narrowing the 12-foot multi-use pathway, which is something we would not endorse. In summary, we at Tree Fort commend the Commission's evolving conversation on the benefits of reducing vehicular capacity. We at Tree Fort Music Fest strum a power chord in support of Plans B. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, thanks, David. You may not be able to answer given your position at Tree Fort, but when I started ACHD, Tree Fort wasn't in Boise, but the city of Boise has made some significant investments in urban design, and ACHD has participated in that. What is your estimate of what Tree Fort brings in terms of revenue to the state of Idaho each year because of the fact that it's here and it's able to operate in an urban environment like it can?
I don't feel comfortable stating those numbers. I just remember over a barroom conversation, something in the, well, I'll refrain from answering. I know it's a significant figure.
I'm going to guess tens of millions, perhaps hundreds of millions. So there's a lot of investment because of what investment in the public infrastructure has been over the last dozen years. Thanks.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, President.
Next up, we have Cynthia Gibson, followed by Devin McComas.
Good evening, Madam President and members of the commission.
Just the mic, please, would you? Could you adjust the mic a little bit?
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Can you hear me now?
That's great.
Okay. He is taller than I am. Good
Yeah.
point. My name is Cynthia Gibson. I live at 1615 North 11th Street in Boise. I'm here tonight to voice my support for Concept B1. As I've listened to the commission discuss the pros and cons of the State Street concepts, what I really wanted to look at is the complete network that's designed to move people around the valley, because it isn't just about one street. It's about a combination of many streets, primarily because it sounds as though there's concern about the people who don't live close to downtown, but they still have to commute into downtown to work and then leave in the evenings. I wanted to understand what the capacity is of some roads. So we build a road and we sing its praises because it will move so many people from point A to point B. For example, Whitewater Boulevard is a 4-lane road with a left turn lane on part of it. It was designed and built to handle 36,000 vehicles per day. With the, and this is in quotes, it was part of an article, intention to be a major thoroughfare connecting State Street to Main Street. So I looked at the Compass Regional Traffic Volume Map, and the average daily volume on Whitewater was about 10,000 vehicles per day. So it is being utilized at about 30% of its intended capacity. So by comparison, Hill Road also carries about 10,000 cars per day, a 2-lane windy road. I also looked at Fairview and Maine. They're also part of the network. And according to the same Compass map, Fairview operates at about 44% of its capacity, and Maine is at about 1/3 of its capacity. And I did see in the packet, the staff, ACHD staff has done this excellent color-coded map that I've very much appreciated, because it shows all of the streets that are, many of them are below 50% of their capacity. State Street is not, it's at 100% capacity, which I would think would be a success because you design the road to carry so many cars and then it does. My point is, why are we discussing the need for State Street to be 4 lanes when the system that we currently have in place is not being fully utilized? The 6-block area of State Street is going to have dense housing, and I expect many of the residents will walk or bike to work, school, shopping, or church because they will be able to. I believe this area will have a ton of pedestrian activity, and I strongly encourage the commission tonight to vote in favor of concept B1. Thank you for your time, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Next up is Devin McComas, followed by John Bankston. Oh, okay. Let's see. Would you like to take Devin at this time? Okay.
Yeah, it looks like he's unmuted too. So Devin, do you mind, can you hear us? Can you introduce yourself and state your address?
Yeah, hey there. My name is Devin McComas. I live at 4902 West Edson Street.
Go for it. We can hear you.
Awesome. Hey, thank you for your time. Commissioners, thank you for your time and for all the hard work from the staff on these projects. You may know me as the executive director of the Boise Bicycle Project or as a community advocate who has worked for bicycle safety and infrastructure and accessibility. But in front of this commission, I would actually like to talk about myself as a resident of Boise who lived a block from State Street in the White Savage Apartments, as an employee who worked at Idaho Sporting Goods on State Street and 11th, as an employee of Boise High School adjacent to State Street, and those experiences primarily. As a resident of the neighborhood on State Street, it was countless times that I witnessed unnecessary pedestrian safety issues due to the infrastructure and due to the setup that favored emphasized cars instead of pedestrians, cyclists, people living in the neighborhood, businesses. And that's why I come out in support of B1. I think B1 would not only set up people living in the neighborhood, living in that White Savage district or in the North End, it would also support businesses. As someone who worked at a business on State Street, it was constant that people would not be able to find parking, that the employees would have issues, that you would see fender benders, car wrecks, and unsafe behavior crossing State Street. Lastly, as an employee of Boise High School working with underserved populations, it was common to see young people trying to get to school and services and seeing the issues that they would have crossing State Street, utilizing that corridor, and the safety issues inherent with that design. With that in mind, I would advocate for B1. From my seat currently in the Boise Bicycle Project, I would advocate for pedestrian safety and an investment into making sure that those facilities are happening for bicyclists, pedestrians, business owners, residents, and commuters. Thank you for your time, and I can stand for any questions.
Thanks, Devin.
Appreciate you.
Next up, we have John Bankston, and then it will be Anna Bergstrom.
Welcome, John.
President Pickering and fellow commissioners, I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is John Bankston. I live at 717 North Pond Street in Boise, and I rise tonight to speak in favor of Concept B1. In college, my first job was spending summers working at the YMCA in Hartford, Connecticut. When I arrived on my first day, I expected that to find the Hartford that I'd always been told about, one of historic disinvestment, disconnected by 2 interstate highways going through the city. Instead, what I found was an overwhelming sense of connection. There's a little pocket untouched by the 60s urban renewal. And there was wide sidewalks, people playing in the streets, kids saying hello to shopkeepers. It was idyllic. And it really drove home the power of the built environment to build community and to build a place where people feel safe hanging out. Everything about the road design said loudly and clearly, this is a place not just for passing through, but for being. Unfortunately, anyone who has walked, driven, or biked through State Street past the YMCA knows that this is emphatically not the case for our downtown YMCA. The lanes are narrow, the crossing distances are long, and we all know too well the tragic consequences of these design choices. The question before you tonight is not a question of throughput or signal timing, but rather a question of the type of city that we wish to live in. Options B2 and in particular B1 communicate that Boise is a place to be, not just to travel through. Boiseans travel in many ways, Whether they be families traveling by car or children riding the bus, they are all pedestrians once they arrive. One additional note that I want to add in regards to the suggestions put forth by the representative from VRT about bus delays and concerns that commissioners have demonstrated about VRT's success. One of the challenges with this is getting the bus back into the lane. One idea is that in peak times, there could be a pedestrian scramble where all pedestrians are allowed to cross in any which way. No vehicles are allowed to cross. And for that 30 seconds, the buses would then have an opportunity to get back unobstructed into the lane and ensure more on-time buses. The choice you make tonight dictates to dedicate space in support of safety of the young and the young at heart is one that is going to last for centuries. I urge you to support option B1.
Next up is Anna Bergstrom, followed by Abigail Morgan.
Welcome, Anna.
President Pickering and Commissioners, my name is Anna Bergstrom. I live at 3003 West Neff Street in Boise. I am a regular bike commuter and professor at Boise State University, so I cross State Street every day, sometimes multiple times a day, both to get to my work and to downtown. I would like to voice my support of concept B1. I use both a vehicle and a bike to cross State Street, and I think that B1 is the best option for supporting multimodal transport. It is the best compromise for vehicles, public transport, pedestrians, and bicycles. As many people have said earlier, vehicles can get downtown not just via State Street, but through the entire system for which we're currently functioning at under capacity. So there's many options for vehicles to still effectively move downtown. However, as we've also seen from much testimony, we don't have the safety available for pedestrians to cross State Street. And option B1 in particular is the most safe option for pedestrians to do so. Finally, with the planned increase in both residents and businesses on the State Street corridor, that wide pedestrian pathway can really promote and revitalize business along that corridor. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll stand for questions.
Thanks, Anna.
Thanks.
Next, we have Abigail Morgan, followed by Tressa Build, I believe.
Welcome, Abigail.
Hi, President Pickering and ACHD Commission. My name is Abigail Morgan. I live at 1022 North 21st Street. I regularly commute downtown. My office is at the Hoff Building on 8th and Bannock, so crossing State Street is always a nefarious issue. And I transit by walking, I bike, I ride the bus in the wintertime, so I'm using all the different modes. And then I do use my vehicle when I'm going further past the downtown core. As someone who regularly commutes in this area, I've seen and experienced a lot of close calls and having car crashes. And so want to urge that the safety is super imperative in this downtown core. The State Street corridor that we're talking about is quite honestly a very community-centric area. There is a school, there is the YMCA, there are churches, there are a lot of businesses. And so for people to access these spaces, they're not always using their cars. And so I want to be able to emphasize that having multimodal transit is really key to having a really safe area that is functioning for all the users. And so I support concept B1 and want to emphasize that I really appreciate the ACHD staff and the ACHD Commission for putting this forward for public testimony. Thanks.
Abigail.
Next is, I believe, Tressa Build, followed by Victoria Savani.
Hi, good evening, Madam President and Commissioners. My name is Tressa Build and I live at 1022 North 21st Street, 83702. I had the great fortune of growing up here in Boise and a great fortune of growing up in a family that values physical activity and the outdoors. I coach varsity sports at Bora High School. I volunteer at organizations that are located in and near the downtown, such as Catch, Boise Bike Project, the Wasmuth Center for Human Rights, and I enjoy going to businesses such as restaurants and concert venues downtown. And I also used to work downtown at Clearwater. I use the area quite a bit. Coming from the north end, I have to utilize or cross State Street every single day to do the things that I love and enjoy. I am here as a proponent for B1 because I believe that it will increase safety for both pedestrians and cars by limiting blind spots, congestion, and the speed at which these opposing objects are moving together in the same area. I also believe that providing people with the options to safely use alternative forms of transportation, which can reduce car emissions, increase better air quality, which we are all experiencing right now, horrible, and contribute to positive community health and well-being. I also believe that B1 will open up that corridor on State Street for increased positive business opportunities and investment. Overall, I've lived in Boise for 25 years. Those who have lived here for even a fraction of that time have seen Boise grow into a beautiful and vibrant community. As you know, infrastructure lasts for decades and generations. And as you've seen tonight, many youth have testified. And I urge this group to make a decision based on not just the now, but also future generations. We'd like our infrastructure of roads and sidewalks to now match the vibrant population growth that we have experienced here in Boise. Thank you.
Thanks, Tressa.
Next, we have Victoria Savani. And then it will be Morty Prissaman.
You pronounced my last name very well. Thank you. Hello, Madam President, and
You might come a little closer to the mic. I know it's can be a
sorry.
little intimidating. You're doing great.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, Madam President and ACDH Commissioners. My name is Victoria Silvani. I live at 926 North 32nd Street, and I would like to support Concept B1. My partner and I moved to Boise just a little bit over a year ago from Florida, and it has been one of the best choices we've ever made. I had not ridden a bike in over 10 years before moving here, and I've completely embraced the biking culture and community. Biking in Florida was dangerous and inconvenient. All roads were those like that suggested in Concept A. Nothing was walkable or bikeable, and the roads were not designed with pedestrians or cyclists in mind. Although I am but one person, considering the comments made earlier about changing one's behavior, since moving here, we have sold one of our cars. My partner started commuting to work on his bike, and we are able to walk and bike everywhere we go, which we have never been able to do safely before. As a new commuter, State Street in its current state is not my favorite, so I feel Concept B1 would be the safest and most convenient option for all modes of transportation, walking, biking, driving, or taking the bus, while also inviting the opportunity for more businesses to grow in a more walkable and welcoming area. Whether it's for a road cyclist enthusiast like my partner or a casual rider who just wants to bike to dinner like myself, I believe Concept B1 would be the best fit for this growing community of outdoor lovers. Thank you.
We do have a Morty Prissaman sign in, but I wasn't sure if you would like to
Morty,
speak.
yeah, come on up.
Yes, you're welcome
Yep,
to come up.
great. Welcome.
Well, I have to say, a pleasure to be here tonight and hear all the interesting comments. And I'm normally on the loquacious side, so I'm going to make an exception tonight because I don't think I could add anything more to this conversation that has already been said. And except that I wholeheartedly support Concept B1, and I look forward to all these innovative projects that are being sponsored by and supported by the city, and by looking forward to all the things that you're considering with these kind of game changers through ACHD.
Thank you very much.
Morty, can we get your address, please?
2102 North 20th Street, north end, right around Elm Grove Park area. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is all who have signed up to speak. But if there's anyone else in person who would like to speak, you are welcome to come up at this time. If not, we do have two virtual participants. The first one is Gillian Horn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jillian. I live at 3029 North 24th Street. This is Avery Horn. It's bedtime, so I apologize. While I do have a vested interest in what happens here tonight in my role as the development director at the Boise Bicycle Project, today I want to testify in support of Project B1 on behalf of my daughter Avery. I probably can't say anything that hasn't already been said here tonight, but I think it's important to keep in mind that the decision that's made here tonight is going to impact future generations. It's going to determine the city that Avery and other kids like her grow up in. I use State Street every single day. I cross State Street with Avery on my bike. And it's important that we have multi-use, multimodal corridors that are good for all of our road users, not just cars. I drive my car, I ride my bike, and I see the benefit of creating a pathway that's going to work for all of our road users. Thank you so much for your time and all of your work on this project, and for everyone who came out to testify.
Thanks, Jillian. As someone that has a 2-year-old, I know this is bedtime. So thank you for powering through and listening in and testifying. I know this isn't easy. Thank you.
And next we have Yevgeny Kratsov.
Boise, Idaho 3704. I want to address first the question of capacity, because it might be forgivable for a layman to or abstraction of traffic engineering to fluid dynamics. But anybody who is familiar with traffic engineering knows about the concept of cleaning of traffic, every conflict that comes from turning, interference, and things like that, accordion effect of a stoplight. That capacity is not directly proportional to the number of lanes.
Evgeny, we're having a hard time. I think you're moving away from the speaker off and on. Do you mind just, we're having a hard time hearing you. Hello, are you there?
Yeah.
We can barely hear you. Could you speak a little?
Now? Like this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Go for it. Perfect.
So yes, I would say if anybody's familiar with this concept in traffic engineering, you know that or they could nothing. Anyway, because when you think about the four-lane design, turning single lane, and you see that it really is like full load or orchard. It seems a car turning into neighborhood, back up its neighbor, driving cars and right out traffic. And effectively reducing capacity traffic control and suggest like in 4 lanes. And I think that oftentimes we could actually look up and maybe do some data analysis on that regard, and seeing how much the turning lane and bus pullouts would provide better traffic efficiency. Also, think about the street. Again, the RT brought up this point that it is it creates downwind deciding the bottom, and it's convenient when it takes 4 or 5 days and going to type it. And, let's put a little mouse on our station that's going to be 25 miles. Also, our children, it's frankly a lot. And, my section, I think I'm probably, and I wouldn't want to have a wide, open street like this or a road rather, and having to wide or say button cars or any areas in downtown to go up in that neighborhood. That's too much. Secondly, I want to add that I work in construction, like this contractor. We go downtown multiple times a week in the recent weeks. 12 buildings over there, and roads, multiple buildings.
Evgeny,
Every time.
I hate to
And-
interrupt you. I'm sorry, we've got to interrupt you, but we still can't really hear you too well, and the 3 minutes is up. So do you mind just stating which concept is your preference?
I support B1.
B1. Okay,
Concept
thank
B1.
you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Madam President, that is all who have requested to speak. I do have one person who provided some written comments in the Zoom, which I can read, or if you would rather those just be in the written record.
Go ahead and read it.
Okay, I'll go ahead and read it. This is from Ryan Trail. He says, I am a biker. I prefer the B1 concept. I prefer this over separate cycle path because it's a better use of space for the non-motorized travel paths. The combined motorized travel path is wider than the sidewalk and cycle track proposed in B2. 11th Street and the Greenbelt are good examples of shared use working. I think it is very important that the bus stop does not stop traffic. It will in B2. I live near 24th and State and bike downtown often. I did not receive information on the proposal until the comment period had ended. And I do have one person who is asking, who's jumping in and asking to speak.
That's fine.
So Whitney Schrader, if you could please state your name and address.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Whitney Schrader, and I reside at 5786 Westgate House Court, 83703. I am an Idaho native and a Boise State University alumni, and I've lived in the Treasure Valley for over 13 years. I support Concept B1 because of my concerns about pedestrian safety and the ability to commute within Boise in an active way. I'm a regular bicycle commuter and highly value the work that ACHD has done for its commitment to connection in our city. I hope to echo the sentiment shared here tonight in support of Concept B1 for its enhanced safety and multi-mode transportation. Thank you for your consideration, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Whitney. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify before we close public comment? Okay. Going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, we have questions for staff? No? Okay.
Well, Madam President, I would, we've received more information about this over the last many months. Just like there's been more extensive outreach than any other projects we've had. So without further ado, with all this information, it's just crystal clear to me. I would move that we approve Concept B1.
Is there a second?
I'll second, Madam President.
Okay. All right, discussion.
Madam President.
Oh, Commissioner Gold.
Yeah, I really appreciate everybody coming out and speaking tonight, and of course, the project team and the interagency team and our consultants and everybody for all your work on this. And I do just wonder if we can amend the motion a little bit to include some of those points through the design process that VRT included in their original letter, which was to consider moving the 9th Street bus stop and putting the bus stops for 11th near on the near side of the intersection, as well as the queue jump lanes, continuing to assess those points as we move into design and maintain the interagency group as we move through the design phase as well.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, I'm happy to include that as a formal part of the motion. I think we got that commitment from the city of Boise from the testimony, but yeah, I'm fine with adding that as part of the motion.
All right, Commissioner Gold, did you have any other discussion on the, okay?
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney?
Yeah, I have quite a few comments to make here. Let me first, I think it's worth reviewing a little bit of the history on this project. This State Street reconstruction project was originally designed in 2019. The design was completed in 2022 and it went out to bid in August of 2022. The low bid came in almost twice what our engineer's estimate was. So it was kind of a budget buster. And so we all kind of collectively choked on that number and said, let's see if we can't make some changes to the project that can bring that down so it won't cost so much. So the bid, even after it was bid, the bid was rejected. And we went back to discuss with contractors and others to see if we could reduce the cost, put the bid package back together again and bid it a second time. The bids came back in early 23. And this time the low bid came in about the same. It wasn't much different. At that point, I think, you know, a reasonable person would look at that and say, okay, this is about as good as it's going to get. Instead, Commissioner Pickering and others decided, no, we need to reject the bid again because we need to completely redesign this. So at this point, we've now spent, part of it was built. The 2nd Street to 8th Street portion of the project was broken out and built. That's currently under construction at a cost of about $6 million. We've already spent another $400,000 on these new design concepts. And the remaining redesign work, if we go forward with any of these concepts, is going to be another $1 to $2 million. And then the estimated costs for these options range from 13 to 17 million. So instead of having a project that would be almost done at this point and cost us around 16 million, this commission has, unwisely in my view, pushed it to where now we're going to have something that'll at least be 21 to 25 million dollars and take 2 to 4 years longer. Now, the concerns were all about, you know, bicycle and pedestrian accommodation. Every project that we do is done with an eye toward safety, obviously. At the same time, we have to choose where we accommodate different things simply because we have multiple demands. The reality in this county is that most people depend on motor vehicles to get where they need to go most of the time. And even though we might wish that to be different, and in many places it is a little bit different, that's the reality throughout most of the county. I'm not convinced that the outreach that was done to get public input on this, nor the public input we've had here tonight, is representative of the views of the people as a whole. And we have an obligation to the people as a whole. When the bid was rejected the second time, I said I thought it was a foolish move. I still think that. And I think reducing the size of State Street, reducing the number of travel lanes would be very unwise. Our obligation on this commission is not merely to put our finger up in the air and see which way the wind is blowing. Our obligation is also to, at certain times, to recognize that, I suppose you might call it the clamor of the masses, or a subsection of that, is appropriate to follow. We have an obligation to all the citizens of this county. And while I congratulate you for bringing out all of the bicycle supporters in the county, I don't think those who've testified here tonight represent the county as a whole. And if I can't appeal to that aspect of what I think is common sense, let me add two other thoughts here. If we as a commission vote to reduce the capacity of State Street, to change it from 2 travel lanes in each direction to just 1, if we restrict State Street in this area and thereby admittedly increase congestion, a couple of things are going to happen. Number one, the state legislature will cut off all discretionary funding to ACHD, period. It'll be gone. Number two, they will pass legislation that will prevent us from ever reducing lanes on roads. And there are likely to be some other very significant consequences as well. I do not believe that it is wise to reduce the capacity of State Street in this area, especially since, as was shown at the beginning, the bicycle route network that is already recognized has all of these additional routes that allow bicyclists to use far less congested roadways in the area, Jefferson, Bannock, and so on. And for those reasons, it doesn't make sense to try to push all of that into State Street when it's not there now, and what's working now works reasonably well. I'm certainly not one to disagree that people might feel uncomfortable biking on State Street. And I would say, yeah, we want to perhaps make our bicycle network emphasize other routes. I cannot, as a commissioner for this highway district, vote to reduce the capacity of one of the major arterials leading into downtown. I think that would be unconscionable. So I can't think of any reason why I would ever vote for this.
Commissioner Hanson.
So, yeah, thanks. To me, you had me at, the city finds this very important and supports option B1. I don't think it's appropriate for ACHD as a countywide highway district that doesn't do land use investments to decide whether one city should be vetoed in their choices and others should not be. So there has to be a huge case to say ACHD needs to step in and basically roll back what the city is asking for us to do. So, and the reality is we already have it. It works. Emerald is a case in point. It was a vote of 3-2. Congestion was going to be horrendous if we went from 4 lanes to 3 lanes on Emerald. Guess what? It didn't happen. People made choices. And in fact, 3 lanes functions more efficiently because instead of constantly shifting back and forth between the 2 lanes, which is a dangerous maneuver to try and figure out how to get ahead, you go through in the through lane and you get over to the left to turn. And so it actually functions better. And also, guess what? There's investment along Emerald as a result. People want to live along there, and the property values on those areas have returned. The city of Boise, ACHD relies on property taxes. So it's proved its point. This is unique to Ada County. Nampa can do this on their own. Caldwell can do this on their own. They can make these kind of critical urban decisions to try and attract the next tree fort. to return an investment of $10 million into something that would generate hundreds of million dollars over many, many years. That's their job. That's their job to figure out how to enhance their public investment through land use. I'm a fiscal hawk. I want to see return on investment. I don't like to see empty parking lots. And it breaks my heart when I see places in an urban setting where roads have just been prioritized and so investment isn't made, movement of traffic through an investment isn't made. And so as a result, nobody wants to invest. The fact that we have investors who've come forward and said, this is what we want to do here and invest, and the city is a partner with them, to me, that's sort of the end of the inquiry. And of course, people have already made choices. We're not sort of forcing people to make another choice in their commute if they're currently using State Street to get somewhere downtown, because they currently use other streets to get out of downtown because of the changes that 8th Street has happened. 9th Street is what lures people to go all the way through and then turn south and go to their destination somewhere. And so we already have that data. The data has been presented. We've been researched. It's been extensively researched. It's really only in the AM. And so guess what? Folks are going to discover it's easier today, even without anything happening today, to commute downtown on Jefferson or Bannock or Maine and Idaho. One of the first ribbon cuttings I went to as a new commissioner was Whitewater Park. And it really does hurt me as a fiscal conservative to see public investment that is being used at, what was it, about a third of what its capacity is. So we invest in these things. If a school district had 5 schools and they said, there's under capacity in 4 of those schools, and they say, we want to make some improvements in the school. So no, we have to add some more capacity to that one school. We'd say they were being fiscally irresponsible. So I think it's fiscally irresponsible not to use the capacity we have in our gridded network. I realize from the western side of the county, it's hard to sort of get this, your head around this, because it's true. If Linder, if it's congested on Linder, your next road is a mile away. But if it feels a little congested for that 20 minutes you're commuting on State Street, guess what? Jefferson is 1 block away. Bannock is 2 blocks away. People make those choices all the time. And we provided them with that. We've made public investment in that. We've invested in concrete to make them permanent in many portions of those. So I think the fiscally responsible thing to do is to go with what Boise has requested that we do. And I see no reason why we should veto Boise's choice, just as I see no reason, even though I disagree with some of the choices that some of our other city partners have asked us to do. We have agreed to move forward and support the position.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yeah, thank you. Just to continue the trip down memory lane for a minute. When we did Emerald, it wasn't for what Jim said. We had decided, and many of you were here then, that there needed to be a mid-city bicycle corridor. And that's why Emerald was decided to be that way. And we still have to worry about the bridge over the connector. Other than that, it's going to serve and is serving extremely well for that. Another little part of this memory trip, I've been discussing this project now for 10 years. And every single time other than tonight and the last meeting, work session, when we heard from BRT, they absolutely needed the design to not include bus pullouts because that would negatively impact their schedule. And part of the reason, a big part of the reason people don't use the bus is because they don't feel that the bus will run on time. They don't want to be late to work. They don't want to be fired, whatever it is they don't want. So they don't ride the bus as often as they would, absolutely would, if it was running every 15 minutes, very reliably, which again, we were told did not include bus turnouts. I'm a little curious as to why we expect the folks from outside Boise to be the ones that have to make the decision to use a network they don't even know well in order to avoid State Street if it goes down to 2 to 3 lanes. We built Whitewater Boulevard because there was a demand there. And as you heard tonight, it isn't being utilized. That is a great place to avoid State Street and to get into some other parts of our network. Why don't you use it in Boise? Do you expect the folks in Star to use it? That's going to take kind of an educational opportunity that I don't want to have myself. I think Boiseans themselves should take the leadership on the alternatives. When we built Bannock and we rebuilt Jefferson to accommodate other modes of transportation, that they were right there. People came here and gave 3-minute testimonies saying, wow, we won't have to change State Street now. That's true. What Commissioner McKinney said about the threats that we've received from the Idaho legislature are factual. Please consider this. If those threats are made good, this project will never be built because we're still not even in the design phase, and that takes 1 year to 18 months. I think we need to make the corridor as absolutely safe as humanly possible, like we are in a lot of other places in the county where we have more than 3 lanes. We can do this. We can do it. I think for the survival of what you see a need for State Street, for what we want to see happen with State Street and the bus company, these things all need to be taken in consideration, so I cannot support the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right, so I'll be supporting the motion for 3 main reasons. The first of which being that State Street as it is not working. Clearly, the data that we've collected shows that it's not working for all users. We looked exhaustively at crash data. And really boils down to, and this is common knowledge in transportation world, which again, I don't prescribe to. I've just jumped into it as a public health person. But 4 lanes are not ideal because folks have to stop to make that left turn, to cross traffic. Folks are too busy trying to cut that gap. And so they're not paying attention to pedestrians or bicyclists that are crossing access points or getting into those businesses. The data proves that that is rampant across these 6 blocks. It just lights up like Christmas lights. It's terrible. And then not to mention, we've seen the crashes with pedestrians, bicyclists, and fatalities. This is not, we know this, it's really not working. And then looking at the public comments, the #1 priority from folks that provided their input was the crossings. The distances, the challenges of not feeling safe. And then as someone that lives up on the bench, and as of recently, my kiddo goes to daycare along State Street. And so I've been able to provide my own little experiment of dropping him off and trying to go down State Street and going to my day job versus going through Whitewater Park Boulevard versus the connector. And as someone that is used to just the straight shot through State Street thinking, okay, this will be interesting to see how it goes, how it feels. Even in today's standard, State Street, and Clancy brought up a great point about things are already restricted due to work zone, construction, all of that. It is wildly uncomfortable as a motorist. Folks are speeding. There's a lot of unpredictable movement. You're having to really have your head on a swivel. And that's not easy for us either as drivers. And then come to find out as I switched over to Whitewater Park Boulevard, that honestly feels like what Boise felt like 15 years ago. It is remarkably quiet and there's hardly a single car, even during peak AM traffic. So I think, again, we've designed and we're ready for this type of narrowing. We've built out that network, right? And my destination hasn't changed. It's just the route. So one, it's more comfortable. Two, it's faster. And that's a really big thing to laud as a driver. Also, similarly to what Commissioner Hansen has said, we've made some really significant investments. Some of which that haven't been mentioned tonight is 11th Street, the 11th Street Bikeway that just finished. 8th Street, that's coming online. That's a huge investment that we've made, not to mention Whitewater Park Boulevard. So to make all of those investments and then to leave this gaping hole of State Street as it is when we know it's an issue, makes it, I mean, that means that we're not doing our job as being very fiscally responsible, and to making sure that folks have a connection, a whole network that they can travel safely. We also know that the east to west pathways are pretty scant. It's the north and south that we've been making those investments in, which is why that State Street connection is so critical. In my research and stumbling upon this whole project, I forget if it was the 1970s, but there was a ULI report from a long time ago that said that this part of State Street was ready for a road diet back then, that it was a perfect opportunity given the development that was coming, all of that. And we've seen that come to pass, and it's coming. And so I think I would be remiss to also highlight that out of the 5 commissioners here, there's 2 of us that are going to live with this design for our entire lives, because this is going to last 50 years. And that's also going to reflect the majority of the folks that have commented. And yeah, most of us are younger, right? And this project's going to last 50 years.
Jim and I will be dead.
I mean, or you'll be the oldest person ever to
I already
live.
am.
No, that's not true. So, I mean, I have to really emphasize that, right? And I see Jillian's little kiddo, my kiddo. This next generation is going to live with that. And the next generation is saying that they want this. They want B1. And they're living with it. That's what they see every day. And we have to honor that. And I think my last closing point is, we and myself especially are accountable to my district and my voters. And that's who I listen to, not someone else from outside my district that lauds threats. So I think that's really important. It's important to do the right thing. And it's what the data is telling us. We're prepared and ready for this. And it's what our folks want from all different walks. And not to mention 62% of voters in that public comment wanted option B. So the majority of folks are asking for it, just as much as that reflects today's testimony. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that came and presented and testified. All the thousands of people that completed our online surveys, Tom, for all of your work, Cody. You guys did a great job. And any attack saying that somehow we didn't collect enough data is completely false, because we did the most we've ever done. It was the most comprehensive effort. And that's just been reinforced through every single stage that we've been since we wanted to take a deeper dive on this project. So with that, commissioners, all those in favor for the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Okay. We'll go into public comment and then we'll adjourn and take a 20-minute break. But is there any public comment on any other issue that we can take at this time? Okay, meeting is adjourned. We'll resume in 20 minutes. three, we can do a motion. All right. So it's now 8:24. We're gonna call the post-commission meeting to order. It's all right. We'll go slow. Okay, so we've just got one work session on our post-commission agenda, and that's the fiscal year 2025-26 budget review of operations and capital. We've got our big, legal sized paper, our packet that we've all meticulously gone through. We're ready for this evening, I should say. It's no longer the afternoon.
Stump Christine.
Yep, Stump Christine time. But Justin. But
Well,
Justin, over to you.
President Pickering, Commissioners, thank you so much for taking the time for this work session. As you know, staff labors months and months to try and put together a budget to bring to you based on all the guidance, policies of ACHD, projects, input from the integrated 5-year work plan. And that's what we are presenting to you tonight in draft form. I did want to highlight this is a revised packet. We provided you with one packet, then we provided you with another packet. And I just want to kind of explain what happened there. That's a little atypical. We were, we're carefully balancing the needs related to capital facilities in the budget. And as the director explained, I believe it was last week or the week before, we're sharpening the pencil as related to the Adams facility. And we got some information that we wanted to include in this budget related to the funding of that, looking at our cash flow and balances and just making sure we sharpen the pencil really, really good for this budget when it came to expenditures, both on the operational and capital side. We did provide you with a change memo from that original packet, so we wanted to be completely transparent of everything that was modified there. And then obviously, Christine is here to go into detail on the revenues and expenditures of the entire budget packet before you. I just want to say that, the ACHD budget process is dynamic, but it also has a deadline, and we have statutory obligations at the end of August to adopt this budget and move forward with the business of the citizens. So with that little preface, I'm glad to answer any high-level questions you may have, but Christine will jump into a presentation that kind of goes into some of the details, and then we'll probably a team of us will help answer any questions that come up.
I think we're ready for Christine. Welcome, Miss Christine Handler.
Madam President, Commissioners, Christine Tandler for the record, Budget Manager, here to review the FY 25-26 budget. For purposes of tonight, I'm going to focus mostly on FY 25. We utilize FY 26. Our second year is more of a guidance year. So then we'll pull that forward next year and hone in on that. So there are things in FY 26 that'll change, but I'm going to focus mostly on FY 25 descriptions today. So on the proposed revenue, we're looking at about $231 million. Of that, you can see we've got new revenue, federal aid and cost share. Those are all project related. Strategic initiative funding. This is a combination of the Eagle and State Street project, as well as the Highway 16 related projects. Rescheduled projects from FY 24. I will be back before you on August 7th to do second budget adjustments. And so that money is coming out of the second budget adjustments for FY 24 into that year. Future facilities reservation of $14.4 million, and then the commuter ride budget of just under $4 million. I just wanted to highlight, once again, show the commission this slide that they've seen before. These are the assumed increases that we took based off commission direction related to the property tax certification, which is the main dial that the commission has for increasing revenue options. As you can see on the proposed revenue, we've got highway users fund, property taxes, impact fees, and reg fees. And then we also have the additional funds that aren't normally going through our budget and are not regular revenue sources, that being our strategic funding, future facilities, and rescheduled projects. On the proposed expenditure, we are balanced in FY 25-ish. Again, as a draft budget, we are looking at a 49% capital project budget. And this pie chart does include the capital facilities portion of the budget. So we want to make sure that we're keeping those separate from an accounting perspective, and then from a view of how much we're actually spending on the capital budget operations and the like. With that,
Christina, really quick question. So can you remind us, so looking at the capital projects being 49%, is that higher or less or on track compared to the last few years?
Madam President, Commissioners, so actually one of the comments I made to Justin was it's really surprising to me that as an agency, we've been able to maintain about a 50-50 split since in my tenure here, so in about a dozen years. So it's pretty typical that we're able to do that. Again, you know, we might see some fluctuation as we continue with the capital facilities and any other spending options because we are utilizing some state funding.
Thank you.
So this is a summary of just the operations budget. So it shows you maintenance is at 43%, overhead, development and technical services, planning and programming. So all of the main parts and pieces of the operational budget are shown here. I wanted to point out on the capital facilities budget, what's included in there. So as you can see, the Apple facility is at 49%, which is that $14.4 million. We're continuing to go through. They're getting ready to go through the bidding process. So in the next 6 or 8 months, I think we'll have a pretty good idea of what we're looking at for a estimated total cost of Apple. The Meeker remodels in there. We're completing the Cloverdale decant station, station that's flowing into FY 25 from FY 24, and then completing also the Franklin TOC construction at $8.5 million. That's projected to be completed next March. The capital budget by program. So the biggest part of this is the capital investment program, which is roadways and intersections. One thing to remember is that included in the roadways and intersections projects are all of the PED improvements that go along with those that are not then carved out. So community programs are only those specifically identified standalone community program type projects, not those that are not those benefits and investments that are done through the expansion type projects. So I won't read this exhaustive list to you. It's not all of them, but again, Eagle Road and Lake Hazel and Eagle Road down to Amity project. Actually, I think bids are opening next week on that. Also the State and Pierce Park Lane project. I have asterisked the Eagle and State, and then the Overland and Linder, and the U-Stick and Black Hat to 10 Mile. That's all strategic initiative funding. The Overland and Linder is some that the city of Meridian got that they immediately passed on to us. So we'll be recognizing it next year. So that is shown as a cost share in our next year's budget. We also have Floating Feather Bridge, again, the Safe Sidewalk Program, State and 21st. The completion of Garden Street with the railroad crossing that had to be done a little later. And then some significant improvements for Meridian downtown pavement and PED. The design project, we have a very hefty design budget in FY 25. We have all of the access to opportunity projects beginning in 25. It's about a $6.5 million total, and we have a $5 million grant related to that. So we're working through getting that done. And then as you'll see, as we continue to go through the integrated 5-year work plan and then get those projects going, we'll be able to see that construction. At least our portion of the construction that would go through our budget. We also are starting design and continuing design on 5 Mile Overland to Franklin. The Emerald Overpass is previously mentioned. And then some big bridges that we've known are coming. We've got some concept design starting for both the Fairview Avenue bridges and then the Eckert Road bridges. There are 3 there that we are starting our concept design on and expecting that's going to be a couple-year process. Excuse me. So with that, little condensed process this year, I will be back before you on August 7th with any changes, anything different that you guys would like to see in this FY 25-26 budget. Also at that time, I will be bringing forward the publication that will need to go to the paper that Thursday, that August 8th, in order for us to meet our statutory obligations of allowing or of informing the public on what the plan is for the proposed budget. One of the things to mention on that publication is that once we publish an amount specific to the property tax certification, that amount can't go up. So whatever you publish, your certification can't be higher than that. It can be lowered. You can reduce it at the public hearing, but it can't increase. It's just a notification to the public of what that would be. And then August 28th is the budget adoption hearing. And I will stand for questions.
Thanks, Christine. So commissioners, I think how I want to structure it, because I have some very like specific questions that I want to ask, but are there any general overall questions that Christine can answer now before we dive into specifics?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yes, it's mostly about how we deal with federal grants. So I've noticed that the 23 actuals was around 15 million. But we only adopted 7 last year. Now we're back up to 14. I get confused over the federal grants. It's called cost share federal grants on one pool, and it's called federal capital maintenance on another way. It's described, so it's described differently. But I assume, so when we're talking about federal capital aid, that's in that category, right?
Correct.
Federal capital aid is in that category, and they are federal money that require a local match. There has to be some local money that's tied in, and I assume that comes out of either property taxes or highway users fund. It doesn't include the local match when you say cost share, or does it?
Madam President, I just didn't want to speak over you, Madam President, Commissioner Hanson. So a couple clarifications. So on some of the summary sheets, I combined cost share and federal aid since they are it's funding coming through our budget project related. That's why I combine those. On the federal aid specific, so the way that federal aid works is for design and right of way, we pay everything up front and then we bill and get the reimbursement at the 92.66%. So the full expense is shown in our budget and then 92% of the revenue for those corresponding phases of the project. Now, when it comes down to construction, because that goes through ITD, when ITD is ready to go out to construction, we pay only our 7% share of the engineer's estimate. So the only portion of expenditures on a federal aid cost that is seen in our budget is only ever the 7%. So if you see $7,000, that's only 7% of the total of the 80,000, 65,000.
Right.
It's too rummy.
So I guess, and this also deals with what Justin is. So what I'm seeing now is some federal aid, federal projects that were not prioritized by the city, neighborhood, or anything in an area that is moving ahead of things that we've been advocating for many years. So there's some sort of criteria by which now we're going to the feds. And I assume we say feds/ITD because we do it through ITD, we get it into the tip and all that process. But then this stuff starts moving ahead. And I can't understand why we can't take things that are already moving and say, why can't we apply those federal monies to that? Because the feds don't just support, we want you to have better pavement and ADA ramps. That's it. Sorry. You have to do everything yourself, because we know from their specialized grants, like the RAISE grants, that they'll pay for a whole lot of other things, but we don't ask for it. So that's why I'm really confused as to why that number and how that's then, reflected in the 5-year plan, where you see these projects that are, and I keep hearing this, well, the reason why this year, it's now appearing, and we're going to start to do some design. And then the next year, there's going to be some right of way. And then the next year, there's going to be, or in the future years, a lot of construction. But these are now appearing ahead of things that have been waiting and waiting and waiting. Oh, well, those aren't federal projects or federal aid projects. So I can't understand how this works.
President Pickering, Commissioner Henson, I'll do my best to try and explain how that process works. So when it comes to federal funding, there's different categories of federal funding that ACHD receives. I think the two best examples I can use are we receive what I'm going to call formula funds or funds on a regular basis through Compass. And those are funds, you'll often, if you read those memos from Tom, they're called STBG TMA funds. And those funds are essentially allocated to ACHD through the Compass process. They're also restricted by Compass policy that is set by the Compass board. So the Compass board has essentially indicated that they would want those monies to be spent on maintenance style projects. We call it roadway capital investment and ADA improvements. And so those funds largely through Compass that ACHD receives go towards maintenance projects. And that's not only been the decision of the Compass board, but that's also been historically the direction that we have received from the commission. When we use those funds for those formula funds for capital projects, which we have in the past, we did sections of 5 Mile, sections of Franklin. We ran into a lot of federal requirements and regulations that were not necessarily ideal, or things like sound walls and other things when you do a capital project with federal funding that become more complicated and oftentimes are not desirable. So there's a strategic use of those funds for maintenance projects that has been supported by the Compass board and historically by the commission, which is why you see them kind of go through that way. I'll use the examples which I think you might be referencing of Overland Road and Vista. Those were identified years and years ago as part of the federal aid process as roadways that need maintenance, which starts with pavement maintenance, but we've expanded that under commission direction to look at the adjacent pedestrian facilities also. So those projects are major projects, extremely expensive, but they are categorized as maintenance and ADA projects. Why those projects, I don't see them as moving faster or slower than other projects. They just have a very specific funding source as they move through the process. We're not categorizing or prioritizing those projects against necessarily other projects at ACHD. They're identified, they go through the Compass review, we put them in the integrated 5-year work plan, and then they move forward. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but that's the process under which we have made these decisions historically.
Yeah, no, that actually, it's interesting. It's not the federal restrictions, it's Compass restrictions. And then ACHD has not advocated for changes. And we haven't, those of us who are board members, sort of haven't realized we could. And so that's what I'm going to suggest, that we really need to modernize the way in which we fund ACHD projects. And frankly, based upon the discussions that happen at Compass, you take a poll of the board members, you say, oh, this is a Compass board policy. Well, perhaps they had a discussion 50 years ago or 20 years ago or whenever, and they actually understood the substance of what they were doing. And it just continues on to the future, because that discussion's never happened as far as I can tell at Compass as to whether there's justification for changing or broadening or deepening the understanding. And so those are the two things I think are critical that we need to change. We need to change the way in which we are requesting federal money, because they're excluding critical projects, and instead projects that are primarily driven by a criteria based on maintenance. And the second then is, if we are going to still rely only on maintenance, I would say in those areas where we need to do major rehab, and there's some collector roads that need major rehab, we simply forestall chip sealing so that they can reach that point where the pavement condition's bad enough that they need federal maintenance money. And that then triggers the investment in those. So that's the thing that's frustrating when we lump these together. I was encouraged by this category of raise grants and then realized that's very different. Because that actually is addressing the priorities of what these neighborhoods need. And the other federal capital aid management process, which is a lot more money. And, you know, it's a legacy that goes back many years. You know, we just continue to just perpetuate, I think, a bad system.
Any other high-level questions for Christine?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
Christine, I just have a couple of questions on the general information. First of all, and this is one question, I know I've asked it before, but it's still something that we have a category of maintenance, and then we have a category of capital maintenance. And help distinguish between those two, because they're in they show up in two different categories here, and help explain the difference between those two.
Excuse me, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney. Yeah, so the easiest distinction between those two is that the maintenance within the operational budget is in-house operations doing that. It's our chip seal program, it's our plows, they do crack seal, all of that within there. The portion that's in the capital budget is going to be contracted out. We contract out the design related to it. We contract out the construction related to it. Typically, those are major reconstruction projects. We don't have the equipment to do that or the manpower to do it. So it's one of the things that we bid out related to that, the pavement rehab.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, good. Then the one other question is, when I'm looking at the budget numbers in this page that we looked at, these two charts where we showed the revenue numbers, and then I compare it with this page that we got, the numbers are different, and I just wanted to understand why. Because they both have the same date. They both say 7/19/2024, but they differ by like $5 or $6 million on the revenue amounts.
So Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, can you help me understand? So you're looking at essentially page 2 of the memo and then page 7 of the document. Okay, so page 7 of the document at the very bottom, that 231,359, right, ties to.
Okay, so that is the same revenue. Okay.
Right. It might be because commuterite is separated out there. So you're going to see a total for Fund 1 and then an overall total for the whole district.
Okay, what does that mean, Fund 1 versus Fund 2?
So commuterite, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, commuterite is considered an enterprise fund, self-sustaining fund that is ran by ACHD. So similar to cities that would have water sewer, so they collect fees to then run that program.
So all of this on Fund 2, all of that is commuter ride.
Yes.
Because the word commuter ride isn't here, but I see there's like, what, 10 different line items.
Right. The bulk of that being their van pool fares, and then they've also got some van funding as we continue to be able to purchase vans.
All right. Okay. I think I see that now. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Goldthorpe, any big questions?
I took my questions offline.
Well, then
I have a question about the TMC, if I could.
Okay, go for it.
So I noticed the TMC or TOC is now, it's what it's called now, right? Traffic
Right, because all the traffic
Operations
operations is going there,
Center.
correct?
And I recognize that, we fronted all that cost. And in other parts of the state, ITD presumably pays for its traffic operations on the state system, but in Ada County, the local property taxpayers pay for it. Do we break this down into what is operational costs that is on the state system within the county? And that would include the TOC costs and other things, so that we have an accurate reflection of what we are paying for state facilities within the county. And I know it was a touchy subject because we don't want to upset the state if we talk about what the county is paying for state facilities, but we don't do that calculation, do we? We don't differentiate in our budget what we're paying for state facilities versus as a percentage of the whole.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, I don't think so. Let me try and answer this. So we do receive cost sharing payments from ITD per an agreement for the maintenance of the traffic cameras that are on state facilities. Other than that, I'm unsure of what that what state facilities you would be referring to with regard to this building.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, just to add a little bit to that. So all the capital costs, anything we do out there in conjunction with the state at a shared intersection, we're sharing all of those costs for sure. I believe what you're getting at is there's some sort of marginal cost analysis that we perform when it comes to operations of the TOC related to joint intersections. The answer is no. We at the Ada County Highway District, under agreement with ITD, essentially run all of the signals and cameras within Ada County. I think there's a large benefit to the Ada County taxpayer and the users of the system for the fact that we do that. And I think it would be difficult for us to break out a cost because the vast majority of the signals that feed into the TOC, the camera feeds, the data, is ACHD only infrastructure. There are some along Eagle Road, Chinden, State Highway 44, but if you took all the signals, and even at those locations, half of it's ours anyway, because half of those intersections are ACHD related. So could we develop some type of analysis to perform and see what that might be? I think we probably could. We have not done that in the past, and I can't provide that information tonight.
No, I raised this when we fronted the $30+ million cost, as it goes online, that the depreciation of that asset that is not being offset by whatever the state is the cost sharing. Those cost shares are analysis, whether we have the TOC or not. It's based on what those, poles and facilities are on the state facilities, but we have chosen not to seek any sort of calculation based upon what the TOC is. I just want a day like that. I mean, we provide an enormous amount of services to the state.
Thank you. All right, so I've got a couple specific questions, Christine. So looking on page 7 for Fund 1 revenues, specifically on street vacations, looking at fiscal year 23, it was a little over $1 million. Fiscal year 24, 200,000, and then our proposed is 200,000. That seems awfully low, but I'm just I'm just trying to understand, why are we projecting 200,000 when we've been getting a lot of vacations?
Madam President, so the response to that is that we currently don't have any applications for street vacations. Those typically come within the fiscal year. So we do those adjustments at the budget adjustment time, because 200 is what I would call like a fairish amount to put in there. It's not something that if we don't get the revenue, we can't overcome that $200,000. But if we do end up getting some, and the same goes with like property disposals and stuff, that put in a holding kind of to see where we're going with that. And then as we go throughout the year, those adjustments are then made.
Okay. Thank you. And so then sticking on that page, just one more question. So on the commuter ride revenues for Fund 2, notice that the utilized cash reserves went down by a lot, of over 100,000. So I just wanted to get a sense of why that was. So that's almost a third.
Madam President, so within commuter ride, again, they're self-funded, so they have to balance their expenses and their revenues. So one thing that happens is that as commuter ride continues, they'll have savings from one year that they don't expend, but they receive. And then in those, we can have additional years where we do have expenses that we need to cover. I know that in second adjustment, so one of the changes that will come in the budget will be the FY24 budget will be updated because I'll be bringing forward second adjustments. And so one of those that will be decreasing is that federal vans funding, because we're not able to secure anyone to provide us with vans again this year. And so with that, some of the additional funding that we've taken from savings, if you will, to continue to balance the overall budget, will go down on that utilization of cash reserves.
So then moving on to page 12, specifically wanted to call out, and this is under HR, Human Resources, just the advertising and the incentives and awards line items. So there's quite a bit of a fluctuation over the last few years. Obviously, the incentives that we approved through COVID are really important, but I just wanted to get a sense of which incentives are these, because that's a huge jump. Want to get a sense of that.
Absolutely, Madam President, Commissioners. So I'll start with the incentives and awards. So one of the things that we budget for currently is career retention, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And so as we have employees who meet those, we pay out those incentives. Because we don't know where they are at the beginning of the year, or if those employees are going to be here for the full year, and if we're actually going to pay those out, we budget just the lump sum of assumed amounts in the HR budget. And then we do a budget adjustment to move those funds out of the HR budget into the appropriate department's budget where they are actually paid out of. So that adjustment for second adjustments is also coming too.
So this line item is strictly for that type of incentive.
Correct. It depending on what their timing is. Let me look at those details on that. 1, 2.
Which is fine, just trying to understand
Absolutely
which incentives are in this bucket.
So we've also got some funding in there for recruitment incentives. So depending on which types of positions we have open will depend on if we have positions that are available for the recruitment incentives. And then the big one is the service award.
Yeah. Okay.
And we do have a big service award in FY26. It does jump up to $280,000 for that currently.
So then moving on to page 13, for facilities, just a couple notes. There was a big jump with utilities, electric and gas. Just wanted to get a sense, is it because we're moving things from place to place and moving into our new yard? Kind of what's the sense of why that big of a jump?
Yeah,
70,000?
Yeah, Madam President. Yeah, so a lot of that has to do with the new headquarters facility. Okay. And then an anticipated amount related to the TOC coming online as well. We were able to get in the closing documents amounts of historical costs for utilities. So we were able to kind of have a better guess on what we would put in our budget for those for Meeker. And that Meeker is, I would say, responsible, but a lot of the increases are due to the purchase of the new headquarters site. So we'll see that. And then some of it will level off also.
I think that helps me then as we go through this. So the next one was the facilities leases, speaking of Meeker. So obviously the fiscal year 24 budget showed it was at a little over 450,000. Mm-hmm. This proposed budget is 215,000. Is that, again, because we're going to only be utilizing Orchard for half the year? I just want to confirm that that's
correct.
The case.
Yep.
Okay. Got it. Fabulous. And then just looking at the overall commuter ride budget total on page 14, I noticed that the mobile equipment doubled, which I'm assuming is the vans, right?
Madam President, yes, it is. And so that is hopes of anticipation that we'll be able to get some vans. They went out to bid this year. We were not able to secure any. So that we're getting into some situations where we need to possibly look at some additional options, having to lengthen the life of our vans. So we're also seeing an increase in repairs.
And then moving on to page 15, just wanted to call out under planning, professional services. So that line item from last year, the current fiscal year to next is going to be cut in half, from 956,000 to 505,000. Can I just get some thoughts around that? Is it because we're moving to such big capital projects that we're contracting out a lot more services? Kind of a little summary would be helpful with that one.
Yeah, Madam President. So there were some pretty big costs in FY24. The bulk costs related to the CIP creation is in there. We do have some additional CIP funding in FY25 as well. In the original FY25 budget and 26 budget, there was requested an ADA inventory. We opted to hold on that while we worked through seeing what it is we have and then ensuring that the data that we collect is appropriate.
And then on page 17 for construction, specifically like supplies, small tools, employee training, are a lot of these increases due to Meeker, some other issues?
I should just
specifically on small tools, it jumped from 3,500 to 35,000. So just want to get a sense of what that is. Promise I'm not intentionally trying to stop. Steve.
You're fine.
Genuine questions.
You are fine. No, absolutely.
I'm supposed to be intentional.
Madam President, Commissioners, so with the small tools, some of that has to do with new lab type equipment that we get and new equipment for our inspectors to utilize throughout the year. So we'll see those fluctuations in the budget varying on kind of life cycle of some of those tools and stuff that are used.
And then capital projects. So basically just had made some notes around the decrease on right-of-way acquisitions and professional services, construction engineering, but then an increase in utility services. And obviously an increase in contractual. So I just kind of wanted to get a sense of what are the trade-offs that we're making that's resulting in
I'm hoping Diane can help
the differences in the
with
budget.
some of that. Some of those decreases will change based on the FY24 adopted budget once we do second budget adjustments, but it is decreasing from FY24. It just has to do with which projects are in the hopper, but I'll let Diane give a little more.
Especially like the utilities, like I'm just really curious about what that is. That's a big jump. Oh, sorry, 27.
Madam President, Commissioners, Diane Bevins, Manager of Capital Projects. It's project specific on utilities, so that would mean that, say, Idaho Power has an easement, so then we're responsible for paying for Idaho Power's relocation. So that would just vary by project. I'd have to, look at the line item detail on the capital budget to tell you which projects those are, but that's what that utility services is covering in our capital budget.
Are those generally a reflection of the bigger investments that we're making in the western part of the county? Or is that pretty much a general parallel assumption, or is it not that clear cut?
It's not that clear cut.
Okay.
I would say, USTIC is a major Idaho Power corridor. Franklin Road is a major Idaho Power corridor. But again, it just depends on what utilities have private easements that we're then expanding the right of way and then have to buy space for those utilities to be.
So it's specifically
state, it's okay.
easements, it's not other aspects of
No.
utility?
No, if the So Christine just whispered to me that the majority of it's in State and Pierce Park. Along State Street, Idaho Power has easements. So we have to pay for
Gotcha.
them to move their actual power poles, where normally most utilities are in our right of way, and they are responsible for moving at their own cost.
Thanks, Diane.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of my specific questions. And then I was the one that asked for the budget breakdown of the overall capital budget by district. And this is not directed at you, Christine, in any way, but I just want to call attention to it. Obviously, I know that things fluctuate year over year. A lot of these projects, right, at times take multi-year efforts. And I honor that. However, looking at the fiscal year 25 capital budget and looking at it by district, just want to name it, you know, we are making substantial investments in Commissioner Gold's district, Commissioner Goldthorpe's district, and Commissioner McKinney's district, the most of which happening in Commissioner Goldthorpe's district, which was kind of I hadn't really seen that penciled out that way. But so much so that it's my total budget for my district as it relates to this current budget for fiscal year 25 that we're looking at is pretty much a third of those other districts. So I say that with some disappointment and also just knowing that hopefully, right, my district will come around. But we won't know that unless we can say, oh yeah, we've made these investments in the fiscal year 25 budget, in the fiscal year 26, because that's what it looks like. It's kind of holding steady. We're going to continue this trend into next year. And there's been some chatter about, you know, our community projects, our community programs budget. But if it wasn't for that line item in this budget, I would literally have hardly any investments in my district, which is insane. Considering we have huge capital needs in my district, specifically Orchard, Fairview, not including some state infrastructure, but want to name that, like Chinden, right? So obviously those are things that aren't anywhere near concept, whatever, for a lot of different reasons, which is why I think it's even more important to be flexible and have our budget reflect the needs of our districts. And right now, my district needs a lot of these smaller, meaningful, but also overlooked projects. And looking at the current level of investment, it's not where I really want it to be. So I'm hoping through this integrated 5-year work plan and looking ahead, we can kind of get back to an equilibrium over time, as we always aspire to do. But it's hard to know that unless we have the data to show that, oh, we're a little bit out of balance. So just want to state that, and also kind of clear the air that there's these rumors that we don't spend money in the western part of our county. And that is clearly false, based off of our integrated 5-year work plan and this beautiful little chart.
I've never heard that before. Honest, that we didn't spend money in the western part of the county.
I don't know who you're talking to.
No, I mean, that's where all the growth is.
Exactly. Well, anyway, so that's my 2 cents that and I really appreciate, Christine, you putting this together so that we all could see it. And I think moving forward, I'd like to make sure that we kind of keep track of it, just as an aside. Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, Madam President, I really appreciate that. And it's not so much the district boundaries, you know this. These are neighborhoods that exist. They're not expanding in terms of the number of roads. There's no new roads going in. So to the bulk of the areas, and of course, District 1 is the one with the smallest of all of them. And that's because there's no new stuff going in there, but there's a lot of old stuff that needs to be fixed. I have a lot of bridges that are old. We have a lot of old streets, and what I'm hearing is those folks, because there's been investment by the city, by CCDC, by others, and people want to live in them, the value, so their property taxes are going up because their assessments are going way up. And they're struggling to be able to live there. And so it's sort of this trade-off. So it's less about the district boundaries as much as those areas that have already been built out, helping to pay for areas that haven't been built out. And, you know, my perception, I'll own it, is that those areas are largely underwriting, certainly the local cost of new growth. And so that's where it's the root issue of the CIP. It's the root issue of why, and they work so hard to raise, these are the priority. The city says this is a priority, neighborhood says this is a priority, and then we say, well, we're gonna fix the pavement on this street, and so for us, this will be a priority, and it'll gradually take up the biggest chunk of money allocated to your part of town. And I think we need to rethink the older parts of town, which are reinvesting. Neighborhoods change over time. And I think this data is really, really important. A piece of information that is missing is we don't know what the property tax revenue is from each of the jurisdictions. And we need to know that. The city knows what its property tax value is. Each of the cities could tell us, and then we could extrapolate based upon the levy rate that ACHD has on the property taxes that are coming from each of those cities. But we never operate from that standpoint either. And that would also tell us a lot about when the investments are made, it enhances the tax base, and that actually enhances the ability of the agency, this agency and others, to then reinvest in those neighborhoods. And if we don't even know that, don't even have that data, then we sort of are guess, well, everybody's the same. Property taxes are roughly the same all over the county. And I think that's a piece of information that I'd like to see before we vote on the budget.
Any other questions about the budget? Christine, thank you. Thanks, Justin. All right, we'll see y'all in the first week of July or August, excuse me, the 7th.